2,771 deaths. Now, if you want to look at a screenshot of the countries around the world, Israel, Lebanon, the US, Canada, Sweden, Norway, Finland, Afghanistan, Kuwait, Iraq, Oman, the UAE, Bahrain, Brazil, Georgia, Iran, Pakistan, Thailand, Malaysia, Singapore, Australia, the Philippines, Hong Kong, Taiwan, Macau, Japan, South Korea, and of course, China. This is what we're looking at around the world. And of course, now this was done yesterday before the case that we then saw in Nigeria. So we're talking about across the world now. We're not just talking about, the epicenter now being the issue. We're looking across the world. Mm-hmm. And then as cases increase day after day, the likelihood again of it reaching closer home, then of course steps up in terms of numbers. It cannot be ignored. We have people talking about it being a reckless move to allow this plane land. And if we can just jump right into that story, of course, the headline today on the Standard is Enemies of the People. 4 cabinet secretaries are facing serious credibility questions after allowing an airline to fly in 239 passengers from China, the epicenter of the coronavirus, risking the lives of 48 million Kenyans. And of course, here a top state official is quoted, "We don't know whom this is. Whatever happened at the airport was a mistake. It exposed Kenyans to danger. Measures are being put in place to ensure we do not have a repeat of such an incident again." I would really like to know what these measures are. And of course, the same is that there are plans for, such planes to land again. Of course, then we saw that it's coming out of the Chinese embassy that only 1 flight per week will be coming in. Only 1. This was after there was confirmation from Foreign Affairs Cabinet Secretary Rachel Omamo that it was under control and that no flights would be coming in. A high-ranking government official acknowledged that the clearance of the China Southern Airlines flight on Wednesday morning, which had come from the Asian nation that is the epicenter of the disease, had embarrassed the government. Whatever happened at the airport was a mistake. And of course, I repeat that. In the Senate, legislators said the Cabinet Secretary for Health, CS for Interior, and for Transport should also be summoned since the coronavirus concerns go beyond the health docket and should be considered a national emergency. According to Makueni Senator Mutula Kilonzo Jr., I am wondering, this is actually a national emergency. Can you declare a national emergency? Quarantine the airport and any other place that these people used to come in. This is no longer a matter for health alone. I am going to propose that you direct that Cabinet Secretary responsible for disaster management. I am going to propose that you summon the Interior CS alongside the Health CS. So
let's go back now to that question, right? So China Southern Airlines had suspended flights, operations from China. Mm-hmm. For weeks, right, in the entire month of
February,
January and February. And then, due to assessment of the situation in China, they decided to resume operations. And they decided to resume operations and said, all right, so we're going to be operating 1 flight out of Gwangju to Nairobi. Same direct flight that we've been operating. So this is not the only flight that's coming out of China. Yes, there are very many countries that have closed their borders, that have ordered shut the access of any airlines going into their country. 57 countries actually have done that. But there are many other countries that are still allowing flights out of China. The people who have come here, none of them has tested positive to the coronavirus. None of them have exhibited symptoms by the time they were leaving their country. By the time they were on the flight, none of them has exhibited this. So yes, it's okay for us to panic, but I think we're also panicking at another higher level that we shouldn't be getting to at this point.
So long as the debate about the coronavirus continues, and so long as we keep reading about the escalation of the manifested existence of the disease all over the world, I'm afraid, unless you want to shut down the news outlets and you want people not to be informed, so long as people keep accessing this information, what the information that's already available, what it has done when you hear that there is a plane coming from China, every fear, imagined or real, now comes to the fore.
Yes.
All the fake news that people have been seeing, everything that they have imagined about the coronavirus is now given life. And what they don't, what doesn't seem to be understood, yes, China may be at the epicenter of this particular disease, but the truth of the matter is that it left the Chinese borders a long time ago.
A long time ago, and it can't only be that. I mean, and of course, the thing is that there's this widespread fear that if you come into close proximity with anybody who is of Chinese origin, then that's a problem. This we've seen that very many cases. I mean, what did we talk about? In Nigeria, case confirmed, the gentleman is not Nigerian; he's Italian. It could be spread by anybody at this point, and that is what should be the concern. Not necessarily that a plane landed from China. Of course, you want to worry because it's coming from the epicenter, as it were, but in this case it could be anybody, and we're talking about monitoring systems being up to scratch. That's the problem.
What is of interest, if you look at the case that was reported in Brazil, it was a Brazilian businessman who had visited Milan.
Right.
Now the situation in Milan is now known, and they're grappling with it. It's actually a problem. So what it tells you is this: we keep thinking and talking about how the disease manifests itself, the symptoms that you see.
Yeah.
But the real danger here is not even just that. The real danger is somebody who actually is infected but exhibits none of those. Now, they also argue that the likelihood of infection from such a person is low. But being low doesn't mean it doesn't exist. See, this is the whole point. So, this isn't one of those diseases where you have a wait-and-see policy.
No.
This is one of those situations where you actually act. You ensure that you take drastic measures to guarantee that the eventuality we are seeing shaping up in other countries doesn't shape up.
Exactly. And of course, we're looking at, just other stories covering around this. At least 57 countries have taken these drastic measures that you're talking about to prevent the spread of the coronavirus disease, including suspending flights and closing their borders. Russia closed its entire border with China on the 30th of January, as far back as that, while North Korea moved close to its border moved to close its border to all foreign tourists and suspended all flights to and from China. South Korea did the same. 8 days later, Macau followed. The US, which has reported 35 cases so far, raised its travel advisory for mainland China to level 4, stopping all its citizens from traveling to the country as from the 31st of January. They did this and still there are infections in the US, okay? Understanding that. Hong Kong as well followed suit. Australia then did the same. Iran, which has also banned all flights between the two countries, as well as Singapore, did the same. Interestingly enough, we still have cases. How much more those than who have not? The United Arab Emirates, Thailand, the Philippines, Saudi Arabia, Egypt suspended all flights. Now, Kenya Airways has stopped all flights, but this was just Kenya Airways. Other flights, of course, from other airlines being allowed to enter into the country. And I think it's very clear at this point that when we talk about drastic measures, they do need to be put in place with what we are seeing now. Because if you don't, then you're going to be chasing your tail in the future. And
the countries that have
problem.
done this have reported cases.
This is the thing. Even with that, they've reported cases.
Yes.
Right.
No, they've reported cases and then they closed their borders.
No. You have like, for example, just for an example, the US closed its border as far back as the 31st of January. They closed their borders before they reported any cases within.
Oh no, they said they're not going to take any flight from.
Exactly. They closed their borders and stopped all flights before the first case was reported within continental United States. Right? So they took those drastic measures a while ago. Australia did the same. So, I mean, you can imagine these countries whom we see to have at least all their ducks in a row are still taking these drastic measures. And we seem to be here with, a yellow-bellied approach to all of this.
But again, global cases, 81,000 reported cases of coronavirus globally. A world of 7 billion people, 81,000. We've not even reached 100,000 yet.
It doesn't mean we need to wait
Deaths,
to get there.
2,000. I'm just saying, look at the magnitude of this thing. The panic is warranted, yes, but also it's not as big. It's 81,000 cases across the world. A majority of them, 78,000, being in China. So the rest of all these countries that we're looking at in this map, page 4 and 5 of the standard, all these other countries have, highest number of cases is in South Korea, which is 1,200 cases. Then the others, the neighboring countries, Japan again, and that. Other countries are reporting 240 in the case of Thailand, 1, 2, 3. It's still, we are still within a point where it can still be managed.
It can be, but of course you need to look at it from the point of view that it's a global footprint that you see with this disease now.
Yes.
And with SARS, I think you saw a few cases outside of the epicenter. You had one case in the United States. You had a couple of cases in Australia. Here, across hemispheres, you see the case, and that should be the issue, whereby this is something that doesn't just stay in a particular area. It's moving around the world. And the potential then for it to permeate even more is very great. That's the problem. It's not the numbers specifically that we're looking at. It is the potential for this footprint to get larger larger. That's the cause for concern.
And globally, all the health authorities across the world are taking concern, and they should take concern about this. All governments should take concern about this, because once this virus spreads like this, of course, it's not going to be stopped, right? So it's going to stay. I mean, these kind of viruses, they stay for a couple of years before you see that they have basically moved out of the scene. Now, if we talk about taking such drastic measures as closing out the rest of the world from yourselves, for how long are you going to do that? You will still open up your borders at some point. This virus is spreading across the world. What we should be talking about is what measures can we take? Yes, we live in a globalized, economy. What measures are these that we are taking to have better surveillance, monitor, record and identify these cases early enough and deal with those cases early enough? Saying we close borders, I think it's a very drastic reaction. Yes, and you are not going to stay with this reaction for long. No. You will still end up opening your borders.
The one question that still has not been answered, we've had outbreaks that have killed far more people in the millions, some in the tens of millions. But the question that I still have not received a reasonable response to is, why all this fuss? What do I mean by why all this fuss? Never in the history of the world have we had people reacting the way they're reacting to this particular outbreak. I mean, within days, within weeks, borders are being shut, flights are being cancelled, factories are being shut down, schools are being shut down, gatherings are being shut down, Olympics are under threat, Asian Games are under threat. My friend, it's like announcing a doomsday. This is a doomsday scenario. So
it's the bubonic plague 2.0, isn't it?
What is it about this virus that the experts know that we are not being told? And they're even encouraging people to take this position, because at the same time you're being told that there are measures that have been put in place that are working. There are people who are infected, who are unwell, and have recovered.
Yeah.
Now, why are they not emphasizing this and
saying,
yes, and saying, something, yes, you can get infected, but you can recover. You are not hearing the recovery story, you're hearing the death story.
Yeah.
The death story is being peddled more than anything else, and that's why the panic is there.
And the death story is still 1%. Less than.
That
81,000 cases, 2,700 deaths.
That's what raises the questions even further. What is it about this virus that is known that the rest of us are not being told? Because can you just look at the movement of things? It's like it was something that was choreographed. It happens in China. We understand what the Chinese were doing. All of a sudden, everybody shutting their borders, everybody shutting down. And when you hear of one case in California, the whole of America goes into a complete spin. One case in California, all right? You hear one case in Switzerland, man, the Alps begin to melt. All I'm saying is, what is it about this particular disease that we are not being fully informed about? Because all the things that I'm seeing are really extreme. Why are they extreme? Why?
Indeed. Let's take a short break and take a look at the weather. At 19 minutes past 6 o'clock, this is the situation room, Kenya's biggest conversation.
24/7 around the world, non-stop. This is Spice FM.
Something for the Foodies is brought to you by Golden Fry Cooking Oil. Good food, good time. The secret to fluffy rice is out. Simply rinse the rice before boiling it. This washes off the excess starch that causes the clumping up of it when cooking. Something for the Foodies with Golden Fry Cooking Oil. Choose a healthy partner in the kitchen. Choose Golden Fry Cooking Oil. Golden Fry is fortified with vitamin A and vitamin D.
Looking at mostly cloudy conditions in Nairobi today at 17 degrees. It's going to carry through the day with highs of 27 and lows of 16. Taking a look at what's going on in Mombasa at 26 degrees. Mostly cloudy conditions, partly cloudy conditions to carry later on with highs of 33. In Nyeri this morning at 16 degrees, partly cloudy conditions, rain expected later with highs of 26. At 19 degrees, Kisumu will be rainy later on with highs of 29. It's 27 degrees in Malindi, looking at highs of 32 and partly cloudy conditions. In Nakuru at 15 degrees, partly cloudy through the day with highs of 28 and lows of 14. In Eldoret at 14, it's going to be clear skies today, rain expected later on in the day with highs of 26 and lows of 13. Taking a look in different parts of the continent in Dar es Salaam, we're looking at highs of 26, partly cloudy conditions through the day with highs of 33 and lows of 27. And in Lagos today at 29 degrees, rainy conditions through the day with highs of 36 and lows of 27. Take a look into Europe and in London at 2 degrees, partly cloudy conditions, rain expected later with highs of 12 and lows of 2. In Paris at 3 degrees, it's clear skies, but rain expected later with highs of 10 and lows of 3. And finally in New York at 1 degree this morning, highs of 6 and lows of -1.
The 90s have never sounded so good.
Favorite songs of the 1990s.
94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM,
This is a Situation
Nairobi.
Room. My name is Eric Latif. We have Siti Muga and Duoko. This hour, we're taking a look at the headlines of the newspapers. Of course, the top story this morning being the coronavirus scare in the country. The standard headline is "Enemies of the People," and that's a very, nicely done graphic headline. Enemies of the People. Those 4 cabinet secretaries. You've got the cabinet secretary for transport. This is James Macharia. Transport, of course, is the docket that manages airports. We've got the cabinet secretary for interior, Fred Matiang'i. Interior, we're talking about security. We're talking about national security and coordination of national government. This falls squarely on his laps. Health cabinet secretary, the outgoing one, Cecily Kariuki. Of course, when you talk about the virus, it's a health matter. And Foreign Affairs Cabinet Secretary Rachel Omamo. The coordination of Kenya's foreign policy and also, of course, dealing with the other countries. Like, for example, having that conversation with China and saying, look, guys, we understand that, yes, we have companies that have very many workers from China who are based in Kenya, and those ones are not in the country. Let's work out a way in which they don't have to come here. So that's why these 4 cabinet secretaries are on the spot, and they've been branded enemies of the people. And what's the same headline, a similar headline is on The Nation, isn't it, Siti?
The Nation is even more interesting. Virus, why Kenya is dancing with death.
Dancing with death.
Yes, dancing with death. Meaning, we are being told that clearly the choreographers have been mentioned, but the Nation throws in someone else who wasn't in the standard.
Right.
The Kenya Airports Authority managing director, a gentleman by the name of Alex Gitari, he's been thrown into the mix. Sometimes you wonder, these stock phrases that the government or representatives of the government like using, measures have been put in place.
Yeah.
What
will
on
be put
earth
in place.
does that mean?
Yeah.
We have the situation under control. Now that one, you wonder, okay, situation, which one? Because the discussion that we have with us here is one of the coronavirus and the likelihood of it coming to Kenya and the likelihood of it causing the sort of problems that we see it causing around the world. So when someone tells you those two things, you wonder, what really are you talking about?
It's an issue of confidence. I think here I completely agree the two headlines. We have a government that is claiming that it is in control, but then by its own actions, you can see it's not in control. When you have 239 passengers, and I have absolutely no beef with the flight arriving here, as long as measures are taken. I know for a fact, and we've seen it before, we've seen even in the news headlines, whenever a flight is leaving China, the kind of strict measures that are put in place. Even the people who boarded that flight in Gwangju were not able to come from other cities because cities have been locked down. You are not just crossing from one city to another, from one province to another. So clearly, within China, there are serious measures that have been put in place. And then you board a flight, you're being monitored on your way here. When you arrive at JKIA, the video that we saw and the person who took that video clip, we've seen has also been suspended, from work. The video that we saw is we are seeing officials at the airport who are not even well prepared
clad in any kind of protective wear.
Exactly.
Right.
So, and then from that point on, the passengers are released and you're told, go and self-quarantine. We are not seeing the coordination of national government, and this is where Dr. Fred Matiang'i comes in. If you're telling me that this 239, we know exactly where they are and we have deployed officers to ensure that they're self-quarantining, that is something. Or if you're telling us that this is what we have, measures we've put in place, all of them are going to be staying in this particular area for 14 days and then we shall release them to go to work. That is something, because quarantine is happening all over the world. Arrive at JKIA, go to a certain place that it's clear this is where you're being quarantined, even if it's an estate that has been listed out by the government for such measures, or a hotel that has been listed by the government for such measures. This is where the quarantine is taking place. 14 days, we are monitoring, we are sure, and then we say, right, your temperatures have not changed, your vitals have not changed. Now we believe that you can go, but we'll still monitor you. That is not happening. We're just being told, okay, so the guys have been told to self-quarantine. And in fact, this is being coordinated by the Chinese embassy in Nairobi, not even our own government. This is where...
It's ridiculous.
It's completely ridiculous.
I mean, of course, we're going to look at it in more detail later on. But I mean, just still going on stories. We talked about the Hajj having taken place. And it's interesting because Saudi Arabia now suspends visas for pilgrims over the COVID-19 scare. Yesterday, suspended visas for visits to Islam's holiest site for the Umrah pilgrimage, an unprecedented move triggered by coronavirus scares that raises questions over the annual Hajj. The kingdom, which hosts millions of pilgrims every year in the cities of Mecca and Medina, also suspended visas for tourists from countries with reported infections as fears of a pandemic deepen. Now, this is what you're talking about, the measures. The measures that we're talking about, this is it. And they're saying, you know what, say whatever it is that you want to say. We understand that Umrah, of course, then affecting the Hajj, it's a major thing that we do every year. But we are not going to continue with this at the risk of the people of the Saudi Arabia kingdom suffering. Those are the measures. Not even don't fly in. We're not even going to give you visas to come. We don't know where you're originating from. We don't know whom you've been in contact with. We don't know. At this point, we don't want to go into that. Visas? No. We're talking about hundreds of millions of people who go to Mecca and Medina every year, and they understand the potential danger that this poses, and they've said, okay, even visas, we're not going to give you. Now, those are the measures that we're talking about. And they're very serious about this. Say whatever you want to say, whatever you want to say. Go into a tailspin because, it's a holy pilgrimage. But you know what? The pilgrimage will end and then we'll be left with whatever damage. No, we're not going to go into that.
You're not going to.
No.
So, of course, you said we are going to have a fuller discussion on this coronavirus and Kenya's preparedness between 8 a.m. and 9 a.m. We'll be trying to get in touch, of course, again with the government spokesman, Dr. Colonel Cyrus Aguna, and other officials to hear what exactly the government is doing. So, other headlines: 5 killed and dozens injured in another night of terror and tears. This is again happening in Mombasa. Kisauni and Mishomoroni, 5 people were killed on Wednesday night as residents were engaging suspected members of a local criminal gang in a battle. The police are saying that those killed were members of a gang that has been terrorizing the residents. The gang launched attacks on the slums in retaliation to the killing of one of their members by residents on Tuesday. Police are the ones who are saying, yeah. Residents took up arms and killed the gang. And those who were killed, police appear to have been, bystanders or monitors.
This sort of
international observers.
They were watching too.
Observers.
This violence has been in that specific area. Every time there's been violence reported and gang activity it's been in that Kisawanim Shomoroni area. And remember, the Minister for Interior actually even took a trip to Mombasa. People were, security officers were moved around. Let me ask the question. Do these thugs come from a place outside the area in which they operate in? The answer is no.
No.
So it means they're people who are known.
Yes.
So when you are told that this is a situation, the question you ask is, why is it that this thing has not been brought under control?
Under control.
Yes.
But also, so the residents have attacked them. So the residents know who the gang members
They
are.
do.
Right? And therefore, the residents are also expressing willingness to cooperate with the police in any tough operation. Remember the tough operation that took place in Mathare a couple of years ago?
Yes.
When the Mongiki had become a menace. And John Mishoki and the then Brigadier General Mohammed Hussein Ali, they basically just ensured that that thing is sorted out. One fine day, it was sorted out. We have reports indicating that over 30 youth, some donning military-like attire and wearing masks, launched attacks on locals whom they accused of killing of their colleague. They started slashing anybody in sight at Milango Saba. They also broke into shops. This is something that just requires a proper, coordinated police operation. Deal with this gang.
If one has any understanding of what intelligence services do, one of the things they do is to preempt such things, meaning you'll have an idea, because this is planned.
Yep.
No matter how shoddily or scantily it is planned, so it's known. And this is not the first issue of gang activity that we've had in this country. We've had far more serious situations, like the Sabah Defense Forces, where these now are armed. That came to an end. Complete. You may hear of a whisper here and there, but it came to an end. We've had other places in this country where you've had gangs. You had the Kayabombo situation. Those things not only came ground to a halt, they ceased. So the only activity that you hear of again now is Al-Shabaab or terrorists. But locals, issues,
Nah.
by the time locals are taking up arms, it means they've given up on the police.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I give an example. If you skip over the border in Nigeria, in the specific city of Benin, it was terrible, where this same kind of thing used to happen over and over and over again, until the residents said, you know what, forget it. We're taking matters into our own hands.
We're going to sort this
At
out.
some point, it seemed as if there was a collaboration between the thugs and the police. So we will. And you know what they did? They get a hold of any of these thugs or terrorists or whatever you want to call them, and they burn them at the stake, literally, until the government of the city stood up and took notice and said, all right, perhaps this is not the way to go about justice. Let's see how we can help you. But residents took matters into their own hands and said, this is enough.
This is
And
a
I
case
see this
where
is the same thing that's happening in the coast.
Meetings will not cut it.
No.
Police action actually needs to be taken. It's 28 minutes to 7 o'clock. Let's take a look at traffic and then the conversation continues.
Spice FM, Malindi.
Right, even before the sun is officially up, there's a lot of bumper-to-bumper action throughout the city, from Thika Road to Mombasa Road, and Limuru Road today joins the foray. All the way to town, traffic on Limuru Road is at a standstill. Of course, at Cabanas also we see the same thing, of course, owing to the fact that there was an accident on that road earlier, about 10 or so minutes ago. So that is already contributing to traffic. It's heavy on Thika Road this morning, headed to Babadogo. If you can use that, you can avoid the traffic that's on the main highway. It's very slow from Garden City towards Survey. The hustle is absolutely real. It is a Friday, and understanding that it is also the end of the month. So everybody is scampering to get to one place or the other. You want to approach wherever it is that you're approaching with some kind of caution this morning. We'll let you know what it's looking like in other parts of the city, but for now, this is what we see. Limuru Road, Mombasa Road, Thika Road, coming off of Ngong Road and Langata Road as well. We'll give you those details coming up shortly. And in Westlands, coming to the roundabout is moving very slowly, but it's moving for now. The eastern and southern bypasses can be used for now. We'll let you know what they look like later on. Spice FMKE on Twitter. Let's know what you see.
It could be this one.
I can touch the sky. I know that I will.
Or maybe this one.
I'm walking away.
Maybe even this one.
Hit me, baby, one more time.
More of the timeless and greatest hits you love. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
We're having a conversation with the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission CEO, Twalib Mbarak, talking about fighting corruption today and the attendant challenges of that. So keep it right here, because the CEO of EACC will be here with us. Of course, 8 to 9, we'll also be talking about the coronavirus and the effects of the coronavirus in the country. Right now, we're taking a look at the headlines. And Uhuru has been told by his brother that I don't have money.
Who is his brother?
The man who is in charge of the National Treasury, Ambassador Ukur Yatani, has basically told the government, you know what, yes, one of the big four agenda is, the dream of building homes and having 500,000 affordable houses by 2022. Unfortunately, we have no money for this project. So the housing pillar of the big four completely shelved. So, in fact, the Housing Cabinet Secretary James Macharia says that they had requested 45.2 billion shillings from the Treasury for the project to take off. The Treasury had allocated only 5 billion in the current financial year, and they've only released 1 billion shillings in the current financial year for this project. Therefore, 1 billion shillings out of a required 45 billion, there's absolutely no way this will ever take off.
But I thought the entire scheme wasn't entirely dependent on the money the government was actually going to give. There was a scheme to set up a mortgage, a sort of like a mortgage plan or a mortgage scheme into which potential or buyers who are interested would contribute to. There was a whole scheme about it. It wasn't just these ones of government dish out the money and we use it. No.
It's true. But remember, it was not a current plan. It was a long-term plan.
It was long-term.
What was expected was that workers are going to contribute a certain percentage
Over time.
to this particular fund. And then, of course, because of hue and cry and backlash a lot from the Federation of Kenya Employers, from employees, they said, the government, of course, remember the president in December said, all right, so this is not going to be voluntary. You're going to have a voluntary contribution into this particular scheme. By the time that scheme has enough money to help you go and dip into it and buy houses, it means that that's at the end of the project, sort of. We have to have money to build the houses, and then now you'll have money for you to go and dip into this. And going forward, continuing that, the Kenya Mortgage Refinance Company, it was incorporated in 2018. Sole purpose, providing long-term funding to primary mortgage lenders, that's the banks and SACCOs, in order to increase availability and affordability of housing loans to Kenyans. The company is regulated by the CBK as a non-deposit taking financial institution, with the Capital Markets Authority providing oversight over its bond issuance operations. More than 288,000 Kenyans registered on the Boma Yangu, 621,000 of them of homes to be built across Kenya on national and private land sector, 67,800 homes to be built by Nairobi County through regeneration projects on old county estates, 45.2 billion requested for housing fund.
You know, when it comes to interesting people in being homeowners, if you simply read what has been published, it makes perfect sense and it's something that can be done. If people are able to join SACCOs, save money in SACCOs, and to do things with SACCOs, it tells you that even when it comes to housing, and remember, financing for housing is not a 2-year. It's normally, no, it isn't.
15, 20
Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah.
It's a long-term
You pay
thing.
over a long period.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's almost like a pension scheme. Okay. So if somebody or the people who are involved in planning this had that in mind, and I'm sure they did, because the one thing Kenyans do very well, planning things and making sure that the arithmetic adds up well. Now comes in the implementation, as always.
Yeah.
By the way, if I may just pause, the same problem Mombasa is having, Vihiga also has the same problem.
Of gangs.
Yes. And what is tragic is that speeches have been made, people have said things, no arrest. But the fundamental change is that when one particular chief was actually being inaugurated, Hamuyundi, okay? That is a place, by the way. It's not, it's not the name of a person, right? The person, the chief, one of the chiefs, assistant of that area, came to that meeting with the crude weapons, pangas, some sort of rungus, some sort of shield made out of tires, worn-out tires. And the purpose of bringing these tools or these crude weapons was to show the residents what they could use when they are attacked by these gangs.
So he was arming his people.
Yes.
Chief
the
came and
chief.
said, now, folks, this
how we're
one,
gonna do it.
this is how you can do it. Panga, you all know, okay? Yes, Rungu, you all know. Shield this. Now, if the chief of an area has taken those steps, what does it tell you? Because the deputy commissioner has made promises.
And nothing is being done.
Yes, the people in the police boss of the area have made nice sounding statements. No arrests.
Yeah, and people keep coming to him to complain over and over and over again about these cases. So he says, you know what? If the higher ups are not doing anything about it, these are the measures that are measures to be put in place. These are the ones.
The gentleman was called Mr. Muli. He actually said every homestead should be weaponized. Every homestead, you should have weapons to protect yourself.
Be prepared.
Yes. Now, tell me, by the time you have a leader, this is a leader, a government leader, telling his people that, what do you think has happened?
He's acknowledging that he's not getting support
Yes.
from his parent ministry.
Yes. And people keep going to him with problems,
Yeah.
and people are dying.
Yeah.
So he said, folks, my
I know
advice,
a chief is a village mate.
he's a village. You can't
He
be a chief.
belongs there.
You can't be a chief unless you're a village mate.
Yeah.
You have to.
This is not an OCS who's come from other places or a DO1 or DO2. This is basically a chief.
Yes, and he's saying security begins with us.
Yes.
To Jisot.
In this case,
Yes.
let's
Now-
sort out ourselves.
I'm sure, you see, what is also tragic about this is that the Minister for Interior also visited this place, by the way.
Oh,
So there seems to be a pattern.
and held a meeting.
Yes. The CS does what I think he should do, goes to determine what is happening. He leaves, not long after. It's not that the violence continues, it escalates. So it means there are people who are actually defying
Yes. Directly
the
defined.
security. They're saying, it doesn't matter what you do, we're just going to continue doing what we're doing. Now, what does that tell you about the people who are supposed to be in charge of security in those areas? What does it tell you about the security chiefs that we have in the country?
This, by the way, could be systemic. It could be
It is.
structural issue.
Yes.
It may not necessarily be that the local police chiefs in Mombasa, the local police chief in that, what do you call that village again?
Vihiga.
The village itself?
Or the village
village.
itself, it's called Hamuyundi.
In Hamuyundi. It doesn't mean that the local police in Hamuyundi are completely incompetent or that they want to see this gang terrorizing them. It may be structural. There's something that's not happening along that chain to ensure that when an attack is being planned, when an attack is happening, they're not getting support. So you have two police officers against a marauding gang.
Right, there's a link. There's a missing link somewhere, of
There's
course, in
something
this
wrong.
chain of events, and it's clear.
By the way, it wasn't actually even the chief who was saying this. Abednego Muli is the deputy county commissioner.
What?
Yes.
Deputy County Commissioner is basically former DOs.
Yes, he's a DO.
And they're saying, you
And they're
guys
saying,
now do
folks,
this thing. This is how we're
to
going to
sort
do
up
this thing.
us.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
this is
Because
what we do.
in my position, I'm telling you, nothing else is going to be done. So this is the way we're going to go about it. Speaking of going about things, Kiama back at not the United Nations, but the University of Nairobi. As leadership row ends, the leadership crisis at the University of Nairobi was yesterday put to rest. Interestingly enough, after Education CS George Magoha agreed to withdraw a letter revoking the appointment of Professor Stephen Kiama as Vice Chancellor. Kiama began working on the 6th of January and he will now serve his 5-year term. Employment and Labour Relations Court Judge Maureen Onyango was told yesterday that Magoha withdrew the letter on the 17th of January. Professor Isaac Mbeche's appointment letter as the acting VC was also withdrawn. This is as a result of an out-of-court settlement between the CS and Professor Kiama.
This is interesting.
Very, very, very interesting.
It's interesting. Full circle, basically.
Right.
Yes,
Because
but
So now
the judgment was actually supposed to be made yesterday.
should the CS
coming out of
raise
the
the
court.
council?
let me ask the question: why did they even need to this push and pull?
Why did it need to
see,
happen in the first
The
place?
argument, what we heard was that the president had not been consulted, isn't it?
Yes.
Usually, the Senate does its thing. 3 names are put forward with suggestions as to who should be, and the president appoints. But these people who've been nominated don't go to see the president. It's the CS.
It's the CS.
Yes. So if there was a problem, the problem would be with the CS.
CS.
Yes. And if the university falls under his ministry, surely the discussions surrounding the sorting out of this problem could have been put across instead of waiting for matters to get to court.
To court.
Yes.
And this was the thing, because at the end of the day, if this letter was then withdrawn, basically saying that there was no case, then this discussion could have been had at at levels
By the
within
way,
the corridors of
Please
the
remember,
University of Nairobi.
our current CS for education was a vice chancellor at the University
of the same institution
for 10 years.
Yes.
So these people are people he knows.
Very well. So they
There's
could have had
no
a
one here
conversation.
whom we're talking about whom Professor Magoha does not know personally.
Of course.
This is true. And of course, I always say there's nothing that cannot be sorted out with a discussion. Talking about it, sitting down, there is nothing on this planet that cannot be sorted out. Of course, in time, that cannot be sorted out with a conversation. And there was adequate time for these gentlemen to sit down and sort out this thing before it having to get to where it got to. And then at the end of the day, we still have withdrawal of appointments, withdrawal of letters of invocation. Could have been sorted out.
But to the credit of the professor, at least this one we've had an
Which one?
amicable.
It's amicable.
Which one now?
Both.
The CS.
The CS,
and
okay.
yes,
And the Kiama.
No, they're all professors.
Oh,
here.
that's what I'm saying.
Yes,
Which one?
Beche is a professor,
Yes.
Kiama is a professor,
Yes.
Magoha is a professor.
Yes.
Okay? The good thing is that they have come to an amicable understanding, and
And
they
this is
brought this
to bed
matter to
now.
a rest, and then people can actually now move on. By the way, the university is bedeviled with many issues.
Many more issues that
Very
could have
Oh,
been dealt with
many.
by now.
Remember, there are these back pays that the university staff members have still been waiting for.
Yeah.
Haven't been actualized yet.
Yep.
There's also, you have a problem with the, my goodness. Anyway,
Issues.
they will sort them out in due course.
The education writer, reporter for the Standard, Augustine Odor, has penned an analysis here. It says that events at the UN are calling for urgent law review. Basically, this sort of interference of the appointment of a vice chancellor under the amended Universities Act, the critical function of recruiting a vice chancellor and deputy vice chancellor is moved to the Public Service Commission. The PSC calls for applicants, shortlists candidates and interviews them before forwarding names of successful candidates to the University Council. Then the councils are expected to appoint VCs, their deputies, principals and deputy principals in consultation with the Cabinet Secretary. Now, according to the minutes available, this process was duly followed in Kiama's appointment. In his own admission, Magoha said he had met with the UON Council but dismissed the meeting as consultative. But that's what it's supposed to be. It's
supposed to be
in
consultative.
consultation
Exactly.
with, right? So there needs to be some clarity on the law and the process, on what happens. What does this consultation mean? Does it mean that consultation must end up with in concurrence? Does it mean that when you consult the Cabinet Secretary must then therefore consult his appointing authority, and that's the President? And if the President, does the President have veto powers? What does it mean? This needs to be clarified, and it's an important point to be made there. So there's going to be the Kelele over this weekend, of course, tomorrow and and tomorrow being Saturday, yes, today and tomorrow, in Meru at the Kinoru Stadium. BBI, BBI, BBI. Mount Kenya is divided on BBI. Of course, being the bastion of Tanga, you expect that the Tanga people are going to be completely opposed to what's going to be happening in Meru. It has been taking Kenyans a long time to recover from an election due to violence and uncertainties. This is repeated every 5 years. That's what is driving the BBI. But a showdown is looming in Meru as the region holds its first BBI rally amid major divisions, unlike other regions where leaders have come up with a common document to be presented to the BBI team on what they want possible to change the constitution. Competing political interests have seen different sets of demands coming from political and social groupings.
Well,
these divisions are not necessarily a bad thing. No. If you're talking about a democracy or democratic process being vibrant, I think it should accommodate diversity. What we keep calling divisions, what we keep calling infighting, what we keep calling differences, it's diversity. Some people have this view, others have a different one. And it's a good thing. When you have a general consensus, when everybody seems to agree on things, that's when you should actually be worried, because you're actually in danger. Because they could agree to slaughtering all of you, and you're thinking that, well, this agreeing is a good thing.
it's a good thing.
Come up with consensus.
It's not.
It is good to have dissenting voices. And that is how democracy is spread. You know why? The public that is listening and observing and participating in all these then gets to actually appreciate and experience how it is that people deal with differences.
Right.
Yes, these differences should continue like the discussion.
Well, let's also hope that they are still going to present their views to the steering committee under this kind of political nonsense that happened in Narok and Garissa is not going to happen in Meru this particular weekend. These people don't belong here. These people belong there. This is complete nonsense. It's 10 minutes to 7 o'clock. The CEO of the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission is already in the building. We'll be hosting him in a couple of minutes. Keep it right here.
Spice FM, Nakuru.
Sugar and spice and everything nice. Spice FM.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
After falling into a 25-foot deep pit latrine in their school yesterday. The nursery school pupils aged between 4 and 6 fell into the pit latrine at Moy's Bridge Baptist Bible Mission and Nursery School, a mud-walled structure that serves as a church on Sundays and a school on weekdays. The pupils are said to have been playing near the latrine during lunch break when it suddenly caved in. 12 pupils. Would be talking about 12 pupils now falling into a 25-foot pit latrine.
Some of these things, when I hear them, I have issues with clearly.
Same stuff that we've been talking about. I mean, it's there. It is
In terms of safety measures that
Yes.
that definitely should be put in place to make sure that things like this then do not happen. And unfortunately, one of these cases is one case too many, and over time we see that they increase in number. And of course, the measures, these ghost measures that should be put in place over time, are actually not.
crazy.
Okay.
Crazy.
Kenya Airways, Kenya Railways,
Railways.
another transport agency.
Right.
The airways that goes on rails.
The airways that goes on the rails has defended the SGR bill.
Of course they have.
Of course they have. Kenya Railways has responded to an expose that lifted the lid on how its officials, under the supervision of the Transport Ministry, inflated the standard gauge railway contract. According to the Kenya Railways Managing Director, Philip Mainga, he said the open nature of the engineering, procurement and construction turnkey contract meant that the contractor was allowed to review and replace specific items based on the changing nature of the project. Due to the open nature of this contract, multiple design reviews were carried out. As a result, some of the initial equipment was replaced with options better aligned with project needs. According to him, all the costs are justified, and the country actually got more than what was specified. He said that everything was provided, and that Kenya Railway said that the 1 billion shillings spent on grass, for example, was relatively competitive as per the market rates for slope protection works.
I actually read that statement. They took out an entire full-page statement on the newspapers yesterday, and I looked at the statement and it made a bit of sense. So, for instance, that explanation on grass and embankment, of course, you've seen the railway. You've seen that it's elevated in very many sections, and you need to bring in grass, you need to bring in, soil, topsoil, and then there's planting of grass and there's watering of grass. So it's talking about that entire process. So there's bringing the soil, there's planting the grass, there's watering the grass for many months. That's what it costs, that 1 billion shillings.
This is what they've said.
If you look at the length of the railway and what is required, it can actually make sense. The problem sometimes is not really the figures that are thrown at us.
Yeah.
It's the absence of a plausible explanation as to how this money is used. And if it's against a backdrop of huger amounts than that being spent and there are no explanations, then what do you expect? There will be doubt. Even when it's a straightforward case that could easily be explained and understood, there will be doubt.
This is the problem whereby you don't provide the information upfront. And then it's necessary because then you have such a huge project that affects the entire nation and you don't provide the information. You leave a vacuum. There's speculation that then becomes rife. And then when any kind of accusation comes or allegations come up, then you want to backtrack and start to explain. You've already left a deficit of trust. You've already left a deficit. And then people are now saying that whatever it is you choose to say in the future, then it's not true.
Do you think also there's a case to be made against the media house? So if you wrote these stories and you did not reach out to Kenya Railways and ask them, all right, so this is what we want to publish. We have this many questions. Give us the answer to these questions.
Yes.
And then they are quoted and said, well, when we reached out to Kenya Railways and asked them, explain why you spent 1 billion shillings on grass, they did not give us a plausible explanation, or this is the explanation that they gave us, then we'd be saying, well, it's
Eric,
balanced.
remember,
Well, I think it's the answer to that, because do you think? I think absolutely, and we talked about this. We talked about the fact that going beyond the surface to find out what really is happening, as opposed to maybe finding out what the market rate was for some of these items that were procured by Kenya Railways, for example. They could have then called directly and said, or had a visit and said, could you give an explanation for this?
Yeah.
Had
And
they
saying you've done
refused,
both.
the story would have taken a different angle. But in this case, I think more work should have
So
been
you
done.
do both. You actually go and find the market rates, and then you also go and present this to the relevant authority and tell them, this is what we have.
Eric, remember that you come from a backdrop of people who, when you're telling a Kenyan that you bought grass, they ask you repeat that question.
Yeah, of
You're
course.
buying grass.
You bought what? Grass. We know it grows free. You bought it. For how much?
A
So
billion
1
shillings.
billion shillings.
Your image
Grass.
of the little grass that is in front of your residence, and you're looking at that grass, someone tells you this cost $1 billion, you're saying, no, it's not possible.
Or
You would have
somebody
paid
else
me a
even
tenth
tells
of
you,
that. I would have
bought
grown
soil.
it for you for a
I
year.
bought soil. No, that one, soil.
So, we're buying soil, we had to transport the soil. You're buying soil,
Soil.
and transporting soil from what?
Okay, this place where you are, don't they have soil there? Yes. And then if you look at, again, the background of the number of things that keep coming up, Ministry of Health, you have a situation where the market rate is 40 to 50 million. Our friends have gone and bought it for a figure that you look at and you gasp. Okay? Then you go to pipeline. So different departments of government have had cases that are difficult to justify. So when you throw in something like the SGR, what you're doing is the seeds of discord, the seeds of doubt were already planted.
Of course.
So the natural response is to doubt.
Especially then when you go into and you don't readily provide this information for people, because for something that has such public appeal, you basically want to tell people, and especially when you know historically that these issues will come up, provide the information. I think we need to become a society of
Own your
information
story.
providers.
Eric-
Tell, even tell your story before somebody else uses the elements to tell a different story.
Eric has brought in an angle here that you actually must pursue. Does the media actually report the efforts they have made to get that information?
Do they make the
before-
effort?
Yes, do they make the effort and do they report the effort so that by the time they're putting it out there, they
It's
can
a
say,
360 story.
yes, we've actually done due diligence and this is what we've come up with.
Well, we are now joined by the CEO of the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, Mr. Twalib Mbarak. We'll be talking to him between 7 and 8 a.m. Of course, talking about the fight against corruption, the challenges, the wins, the mistakes learned, and everything about the fight against corruption in the country. If you have any questions for him, of course, you can post them on our social media platforms. We are live streaming on Facebook, Spice FM KE, on Twitter, @Spice FM KE. Also, you can post your comment on YouTube, where we are also live streaming Spice FM KE. Join the conversation on Instagram as well. We're there, Spice FM KE. This is the Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. It's now 7 o'clock. Let's take a look at traffic and then begin the corruption conversation. Good morning.
Sugar and spice and everything nice. Spice FM.
Spice up your life.
All right, with already heightened levels of traffic on Mombasa Road this morning, we see the fog extremely low right around coming off of Athi River and Kitengela, and it's very, very low. Fog lights up, of course, is what we recommend for this morning. Of course, it affects the fact that traffic will be much slower this morning as you go, so you need to approach with caution. In and outbound, of course, is something we need to look into. Kiambu Road is very clear right now, all the way joining the superhighway. Very, very slow, snaking very slowly, but then clear after the Pangani underpass and along Muranga Road all the way until town. All right, looking at other parts, Limuru inbound, the drift just before Village Market, there's been an accident, and this explains why we had a gridlock earlier. Traffic is slowly building up, but be patient because it's being cleared. Try not to overlap, folks, because this will definitely compound the problem. All right, looking at Langata Road this morning, as far back as KWS, we have an issue there, but of course, as you get to the roundabout, you should be fine. Everywhere you look this morning, you throw a stone, you're going to land on traffic, so you need to be patient this morning. We'll let you know what it looks like in a short while. Tell us what you see. Be our eyes on the road. Let us know on Spice FM KE, and let's see how we can keep people moving this morning.
This is the Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latin, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This
We're broadcasting
is
the
the
show from
Situation
94.4 in Nairobi to 87.9 in Mombasa, Kisumu 102.5, 96.0 in Nakuru, Eldoret 96.7, 90.9 in Nyeri, 97.7 in Malindi. We also live stream this show every morning on Spice FM KE, Facebook. We are on Twitter at Spice FM KE. You can also tag us individually at Eric Latif, at CT Muga, at Nduoko. And also, of course, you can also watch us on Spice FM KE YouTube and www.spicefm.co.ke. Joining us on the hot seat this morning is Twalib Mbarak, the Chief Executive Officer of the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission. Now, you know, this is the body that has the principal mandate of fighting corruption in this country. Well, the rest of the country has a principal mandate of participating in corruption. Well, no, that's not the case. Twalib, thank you very much for joining us, and Karibu to Spice FM.
Thank you, Eric.
Thank you for, taking the time to come in this early in the morning and to engage with us, of course, and tell the public about the fight against corruption. So let's just start from the basics. Just for many people who are not aware, just give us the brief mandate of the EACC.
Thank you, Eric. The commission was formed through the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Act of 2011 Of course, there had been other corruption bodies before. And the main mandate of the commission is to fight corruption through enforcement, public education and awareness, which include things like system reviews. And the vision is to have the country to be a corruption-free country that believes in ethics and transparency.
When you talk about ethics, of course, this is something that is very, very broad to define. How would you define ethics?
That's quite academics, but it can be in many forms, depending on how you look at it.
Yes.
I think basically ethics is how people do the right things without having somebody with a whip behind you, knowing that whatever you're doing is right and is correct as per the norms of the society, as per the laws of the country. I think when you are like that, you can say that Eric Latif is
an ethical man.
An ethical man.
Am I an ethical man?
That's a conversation for another day, I think.
Why don't we ask questions that can be responded to
in
like
an hour?
Do I have teeth? And we look at you and we say, yes, Eric, you have teeth. Okay. But Mubarak, I want to just dive right in and ask. The National Treasury put in place, and they drafted actually, a certain regulation. We call it the Anti-Money Laundering Regulation of 2019. Now, we know what this was supposed to do. It was supposed to help receive, manage all proceeds that were, let me use the one word, confiscated. How has this helped to strengthen this particular department that you head?
First of all, I'll give an example, a historical example of why we need this kind of an act. You remember very well, sometimes back, Grand Regency was recovered.
Yes.
At that time, I used to work with the Kenya Anti-Corruption Commission. When it was recovered, the Kenya Anti-Corruption Commission at that time handed over the hotel to the Central Bank of Kenya because of the issue of receiver or whatever. It was a property. It went back to the Central Bank of Kenya as a property of the Central Bank of Kenya. Later on, within a short time, I know you're a senior citizen. You know what transpired. We have solved a problem of a recovery of very tangible asset. Later on, you hear that this asset was sold
to a certain
and
individual.
a certain individual. Then issues are coming up that it was not done properly. There were allegations that it was undervalued deliberately. Now here you have recovered a public asset. And then from somebody who did something wrong, when you're handing it over to the entity that is supposed to take it, another scandal comes up. Now, what was noted out of that is that we can do asset recovery. The Asset Recovery Agency can do asset recovery from issues to deal with crimes such as human trafficking, drug trafficking, money laundering, and terrorism. For us, we do asset recovery on issues related to economic crime. If we find that Eric Latif is becoming so rich and is a public officer, we write a notice to you that, look, Eric, we suspect that there's something going on about your wealth, which is not commensurate to your economic activities. So you're given a letter by the ESCC to explain how you got that money. And we take a process of trying to recover. You remember very well we had a case in Nairobi where a certain public officer in a county, we managed to recover some amount of money, though not what we wanted, because I think we got only 1/3 of that and we have appealed. So the issue, the big question came, which was the reason why this act is coming into place. When you recover assets, whether it's money, gold, where do you take that? Where do you take that? The other thing, I want to go and confiscate. I realize that you have a very big ranch. You have managed to get that ranch through a corrupt system.
Right.
Let's say it is in Ukambani or Coast or Timau. You have 10,000 cattle, several boreholes. You even have horses. If we want to come and confiscate that farm, how do we go about it? Do we have expertise to start feeding horses? Vaccination of the,
what are we going to do? Are we going to sell them off? What?
So this act will also take care of that. How do you, in Kenya, when you talk of assets, Kenyans believe it's just
money.
two things, money and land.
Yeah.
But there are many things. So this act will ensure that there's an effective and a procedural way of how that recovered asset is taken care of.
So how does it address that actually? You know, you've just took the example that you've just given. Ranch with livestock in it.
It will actually. I'm coming there. It will take care of cash recovered, physical assets. For instance, if you're talking of housing units, effectively it will look for a real estate manager through a transparent way, where they will run that estate. The money will be deposited to this on a set account by the government. So at the end of the year, that account you can tell. This is what has been recovered by ESCC. This is what was recovered by the Asset Recovery Agency. This is what was recovered by the DPP. And it's one basket. Currently, that one is lacking. Yeah. So talking about what happened with the Grand Regency, this is a good example why we need this act.
Right. To come into place. And over the question of time comes into play here with a lot of these cases. I mean, if you just look at the public's opinion about how long some of these cases take, and it's an issue. What would you have to say about that in terms of what is necessary to have some of these come into play, and why does it take so long?
I think I may need 2 hours to explain that. But the big question is not how to answer you. The question is how to squeeze time. And I want to take you through. Because we interact with the public. We are not angels. When we go out there, somebody asks you, most of my friends, they call me Major because that's the rank I left the army.
The army.
So they ask you, Major, mbona mjafunga watu?
Yeah.
Sorry, everybody's baying for blood.
And you look at the person, this is Eric Latif, a very exposed person. But he doesn't understand the system of how somebody is taken through the prosecution.
The legal process.
The legal process, you're
Yes.
right. What happens is this. I want to start with ESCC and equivalent to DCI.
Yep.
Because right now we really work under multi-agency team, and I work very closely with the DCI and the DPP. We get a case. It has come to the ESCC in form of a report, either at the report center, anonymous letter, Twitter, email, even nowadays WhatsApp. And I think WhatsApp is becoming very popular. I've even told my staff, look, we need to have a WhatsApp number for every of our station. Somebody will tell you, I've picked these documents from the county. People are on the verge of stealing. There's some vehicles that are being bought. The cost is exaggerated twice, and the payment is actually tomorrow. What will you do? So what happens is that once we get a case, we do what you call preliminary investigation. Sometimes maybe it's somebody, you have harassed him in the office as a manager, now he wants...
get back at you.
Sometimes there's an element of vendetta.
Yeah.
We have element of clanism. When you hear a governor is stealing, and especially when the report is from northern Kenya, you'll see the complainant is from different clan from the accused.
From the accused, yes.
So you have to balance between facts and clanism.
Yes.
You have to balance even spouses. When people are...
Disagree.
It has happened.
Yes.
One prominent person, no name, the spouse revealed a lot of things about him, that this is what this fellow is having. But since now he has abandoned me, can you deal with him? So what happened is this. At preliminary investigation, we do investigation and look at the merit of the case. From there, we put that case into full investigation. And it can be under several systems. Either we do investigation with the aim of charging you on economic crime, or writing to you maybe civil recovery. You have grabbed some land which you are irregularly allocated, or it could be issues to deal with ethics. You are state corporation manager, MD, you have brought 6 of your relatives and employed them. One is your niece, one is your nephew, one is your concubine, one is what. So we go through and say, we take action against you. That won't be ethical, yeah? And it may lead to your suspension or even being taken to court. So after that, the case, the investigators do the investigation, they make the file, and they take it to their team leader. Their team leader says, there's a case here, continue. It is taken to the legal department. They brainstorm with the legal department. They do what you call crime reading to see whether the so-called charges against that particular individual will be sustainable if that case is taken to court. Listen to the process. After that, we compile cases and we have what we call an enforcement committee within the EACC. It is being headed by one of the commissioner who is a prominent lawyer by profession. He's the chairman. And we bring all senior investigators and all senior legal mind in the commission. They go through each and every file. There are two things at that stage. The file will be recommended to be taken to the DPP, or there may be gaps. Or say, no, this file, e-file hajaifa, rudisha. Go and address A, B, C, D. They go back. When they go back, it can take 1 week, it can take 2 months. Suppose there is a critical document that is missing. And without that document, we are foreseeing
a case.
We are foreseeing this case is going to collapse.
Yeah.
What do?
You wait.
You wait. But do you know what happens with Kenyans?
We can't wait.
Of course.
Kenyans will
What are you waiting
say,
for?
these EACC investigators have been bribed.
Actually-
That is why they are sitting on this case.
Yes.
That's the reality. I'm here to talk to them.
True.
They say, hii watu wamekula pesa. Hii case is 3 years hapa na hakuna mali
Yeah.
imeenda.
Na hakuna mali itaenda.
Na haiendi, hii
Yeah.
imekaliwa. Or politicians will say, hii wameambiwa wakalie.
Yes.
They are sitting on it for political reasons.
And there'll be a comparison.
And I'll give you
This other case was fast-tracked, and this one
Yes.
is taking too long. What's
Yes.
happening?
And there's this common saying, how come that mwizi ya kuku anafungwa 2 days
Yes.
and a corruption guy 3 years? But mwizi ya kuku kinaenda pale anasema alivunja ibanda, kuku ndio huyu, tulimshika. Half an hour you're done.
Ama manyoya ya kuku.
Ndio hii hapa.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, but you see, when you talk of a corruption case sometimes involve even a foreign jurisdiction.
Yeah.
Pesa imeenda Italy, ikatoka ikaenda Dubai, ikarudi ikaenda Mauritius, ikaenda. So all those facts you have to compile. So you can see the reason why a case can take too long. And I'll give you a good example of a classical example of such a case. When I came in last year, there was this case of Lake Basin Development Authority.
Yes.
Things from your area, maybe.
It most definitely is.
Yes.
It's from my county.
Yeah.
Yes.
So Lake Basin Development Authority, when it was being investigated, it took about 2.5 years.
Yes.
But last year when I came into the office, we were even summoned by the Senate and I think other bodies. Why are you not finishing this case? Even the leaders in Kisumu went and accused EACC that it is the main culprit of delaying the opening of that complex, that we have painted a negative image about that complex, that even prospective tenants are not willing to come to that building. But we had 2-3 issues that we were dying to get in terms of documents for that case to go through. Lastly, finally we managed to get the documents. We got hold of the people, we charged them, and here we are. We are moving on. Now, the question of delay now, this is where it comes in. So what happens is that once the enforcement committee, let me take you back to the system. Once the enforcement committee is done, we prepare what we call Section 35 report. Section 35 report is a summary of that case addressed to the DPP. We forward that file to the DPP. What we have done with Nurdin since I took over, I told him this issue of just bringing a file to you, inakaa huko inaangaliwa na your guys there, then they come back and say there are these gaps.
There are gaps here and there.
Or what they normally term as cover points, but actually they are gaps. I told him, look here, we need to work smartly, because if we work hard, we shall die. We need to work smartly. What do? Get high impact cases. Because one of the biggest challenge, and I think maybe you'll ask me later, one of the biggest challenge that we have, both the DCI, myself, EACC, DPP, and judiciary and other places, capacity. Capacity is a very big problem.
Why is it a problem?
Yeah, very good. Capacity is a problem because of funding.
Simple.
Simple. You can't run your house if you don't have money. Your wife will take off, and even your kids will take off, and go and look for money somewhere.
We will come back and actually
so
ask you that.
we'll come about capacity, and also I don't blame the government, because capacity, when you talk of funding, the government has different priorities. So they will tell you, as much as we want to assist you in fighting corruption, we also have other issues: health, education,
Build the nation.
So it cut across everywhere, and every organization in the world. Even if you go to the FBI and other international organizations,
They'll complain about
they will tell you the money they are getting is not enough. You may find it's very big in relation to the American economy or some of these European countries, but they will tell you this is not enough. These are cuts. So we go back to that filing system. So we talked to what we decided with the DPP is that can we focus on high impact files or high impact cases? Because the mandate of the commission, and this is something that we are praying that it will be amended, is that we are supposed to fight corruption, and we are supposed to investigate all cases that are reported on corruption. Now, according to me, even when I appeared before the Justice and Legal Affairs Committee, when they were vetting me, because I used to be in KSCC before I went to Kenyan. So I told them openly that, look, we have a problem with this mandate. Because many anti-corruption bodies in the world, I've been to the Serious Fraud Office, I've trained with the FBI, and I know how their system works. I've been in Hong Kong with the Independent Anti-Corruption Commission of Hong Kong. Many reputable anti-corruption bodies. There's a threshold of what they should investigate. If you go to the Serious Fraud Office, they will tell you in a year, we handle about 20 cases. 20. And out of that, maybe we'll have 5 major cases. ESCC handles 3,600 cases. In a year.
Let's take a short break on that note. Take a look at traffic and weather. Sorry, this is the situation. About 20 minutes past 7. Talib Mbarak is the EACC CEO. Good morning.
Cranking up the volume.
This is the best.
With the greatest hits ever.
The skies are clearing up in Nairobi today. Mostly cloudy conditions will prevail through the day, though. Currently at 17 degrees with highs of 27. In Mombasa, 27 degrees is partly cloudy through the day at highs of 33. It's 16 degrees in Nyeri with rain showers expected later and highs of 26 and lows of 14. Rain expected in Kisumu later on today with highs of 29 and lows of 21. Malindi weather today, highs of 32 and lows of 27 and partly cloudy conditions. Moving on to Nakuru at 16 degrees. Clear skies with a few clouds later, highs of 28 and lows of 14. It's 14 degrees in Eldoret at 26 degrees the high with rain expected later coming down to a low of 13. Taking a look in East Africa in Dar es Salaam at 27 degrees, highs of 33 and partly cloudy conditions. In Kampala, it's a cloudy day at 22 degrees. Rain expected with thunderstorms at highs of 26 and lows of 21. And further afield in Lagos at 28 degrees, partly cloudy conditions with rain expected later today to cool things down. Still with highs of 36 and lows of 27.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
This morning is Talib Mbarak, the Dragon Slayer, the man who's in charge of the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission. You're telling us before we into this break that you approached the DPP and said, now let's work smart. Let's take the big cases, high impact cases. So you were explaining to us why we see like it takes too long for you to slay the dragon.
Yeah, let me proceed on that, Eric. What we have done now, instead of just sending the file with a covering letter and the Section 35 report to the DPP, we have now organized that he gets his prosecutors and our investigators who have been dealing with those files. They sit down, they brainstorm, they go through the file, and sometimes even myself and the DPP attend the presentation, depending on the size of the case. If it's a big baboon or big fish, we pay a lot of attention because we don't want to go wrong. These cases, when they go wrong, we are normally on the receiving end.
Of course.
And there are other dynamics of why people go wrong, which I may not be able to talk in front of you here. But you can guess as a Kenyan what goes on sometimes in the whatever. So what happens is that we look at those particular files and we say, now this file is watertight. This is like water in a glass. I've never seen a glass leaking. A glass will just break and everything will spill. But I don't know whether you've seen a glass leaking.
No, but Mbarak, apart from, you mentioned the case in Kisumu. Can you give us an example of another watertight case which of serious magnitude that you've looked at and said, okay, this one,
we're
we've got this
satisfied.
one.
I think I would not like to talk about some of these cases because some of them are before court.
But do they exist?
They are there.
Okay.
There we have charged governors, we have charged ministers. If those are not big cases,
Actually,
that go
the
to-
question I'm asking has been answered. So when these cases go to court, it means you have looked at your evidence and you know everything is in
Internally,
place.
you're satisfied.
the explanation I've given you tells you that we don't just take cases for the sake of taking cases.
Right.
We are not after numbers.
By the
in
time
fact, one of my strategy, we are obliged to provide quarterly reports to Parliament.
Yep.
And sometimes my officers will tell me, by focusing on high impact cases, people will see a drop in numbers.
Our report will just be one page.
Yes, I say it doesn't matter. We go on high impact cases, and the numbers is not an issue. Let's look at the quality and the message. Because I can tell you now, with about 4 governors being charged, the feedback I'm getting on the ground is that there's semblance of order in the counties. Because there are cases.
So the deterrence.
The deterrence aspect of it. So we are meeting our mandate, that is enforcement and deterrence. There is an element. And previously, most of the executive officers in the county, when they are being investigated, they will tell you, the governor told us. Or if it is a ministry, they will tell you, the CS told us. But CS is not an accounting officer.
No.
The governor in the tender process, you will never see his signature. So you are told by the governor, yes, we are taking you. So now people in the counties are now telling their bosses, I can't do this. And we are telling them, if you are being forced to do that, just tell us secretly that I'm being pushed, there's this scandal in the offing. We'll come and prevent. In fact, prevention is better than the issue of policy.
So be a whistleblower.
Yeah, because some of these cases, as much as Kenyans love to see cases being taken to court, there's a case in this country that when it started, I'm sure either you were in primary or maybe even nursery. I don't know how your age, Eric. There's a case called Goldenberg. Goldenberg started when I was a bachelor. Right now, maybe very soon, my children will tell me I want to get married. The case is still in court.
Yeah.
The witnesses are nowhere to be seen. Some of them
Have died.
Natural attrition.
Yeah.
Others, maybe they are senile
Yep.
or sick. So those are some of the reasons, the issues about the delay, which we should come and talk about. So when we do that with the DPP, let's go back. Let's not divert. We take the case to court. The DPP gives me a go-ahead. You can charge this guy. And that's when you hear that I'm arresting a governor. Some are taking off, some are hiding, whatever. We arrest. If it's a minister, he's picked. If it's a PS, he's picked. If it's a head of a state corporation, he's picked. Now, immediately we charge that person. Here, there's a big barrier.
Can I ask before you go to that?
Yes.
Once that individual is charged, is the job of the EACC done?
Good question. It is done, but not fully done. Everything now goes to the DPP. But once in a while, as the case is going on,
As it progresses,
yes, the DPP may tell you, these people have demanded this document.
Yep.
Can you give us?
Give us the document.
So you don't switch off.
All right.
You are on the lookout as EACC to back up, and you don't detach yourself from the DPP, because if that case is going to be dismissed, the backlash will be to the
come back to
DPP
you.
and the EACC. So you still work with the DPP. But now the biggest responsibility now goes to the DPP. When the DPP goes to court, now it's the issue of the DPP and the judiciary. But at the same time, the DPP has got no control of the judicial process. Now that is where the biggest challenge of fighting corruption in this country comes in.
So have you
And
seen
let me
Yeah.
interject. And I am not saying the judiciary is bad. I'm talking of the process. The judicial process in fighting corruption in Kenya is very weak.
Okay.
And I want to give you an example. Yesterday we had a ruling. You know Woodley houses
Yes.
Yes.
very well.
Yes.
We filed a case. At that time I was working with the Anti-Corruption Commission. I had just reported 2006. We had filed a case as KACC to recover Woodley houses because they were illegally allocated. Let me take you through. These houses, they're about 100 and something, I think 110 if I'm not wrong. So we wrote all allottees, including senior people. You know, this was abuse of office.
Yeah.
You are a senior man, you are given a government house or those days you used to call them local authorities. Just because you're connected, everybody was given house. Can you imagine those? They are old but classical with good compound.
Right.
Yep.
So we wrote to all allottees. Half of them accepted to have what you call ADR, Alternative Dispute Resolution. They say, I will surrender this plot and the house, but iko pesa mimi nilipa kwa council.
Yeah.
Nirudishiwe pesa yangu. And we enter into consent. He brings a lawyer and our lawyer. So half of them decided to relinquish the houses. Half of them. Half of them walikata.
Let's fight it out.
This is our house. These are our houses. So the ruling from 2006, the ruling was done yesterday.
What has
14
been
years
happening
later.
since 2006?
That is the court process now. We have no control over it. The DPP has got no control. And this is a civil matter.
So what was happening during this time?
In the
This is what I'm
14
asking.
years, what was going on?
Adjournment.
Adjournment by the defense or by
Mostly capacity. We do what you call civil recovery.
right.
And we file cases of civil recovery in court. Right now, if you put a civil recovery case in court, the nearest
It joins the queue.
the nearest hearing is 2021. The hearing ile kuja kutaja tu 2021.
Yeah.
So you get the point.
Because of the backlog.
The backlog, I don't know about the judiciary, but maybe they'll be able to explain, because of course they talk about underfunding, capacity problem, which we also have.
Yep.
When you look at EACC has got about 730 staff, and investigators, they are less than 200. If you look at in a region, because the constitution said that we should be everywhere in the county, but because we don't have the money and the capacity.
How many instances do we see when you go to court, either the DPP or in a particular case, the EACC is the one that's applying for adjournment?
On many occasions, it is the judicial system. You'll be told, judge
Not available.
is not available, or there is you'll get always. And that one, there is another aspect of it which I was going to talk about. It really eats into our budget, because the Woodley case, 14 years,
Yes.
and this ruling of tomorrow, we are not yet done. It came in our favor, that the judge said the process was flawed, and the houses should revert back to the county, because before it was used called local authority.
Yes.
Right.
So they are going to start collecting rent, the county. But I know those guys are going to put an appeal case. When they appeal,
Everything stops.
Another 14 years.
Another 14 years.
Is there no process by which you can fast forward such a case?
No, you can. No, it is. These are systems.
It follows its own pace.
Unless you go and change laws in parliament and say maybe we'll have a gachacha system of court system.
Yeah.
Unawekwa hapa, iko wazee hapa wanaamua hii.
Sort out this issue.
But as with the current system, we as EACC, DCI, DPP, we have no control over the process.
Let me ask a different question.
Ask that city when we come out of this
Yes.
break. Let's first take a look at traffic. In the studio on the hot seat is Twali Mbarak, the EACC Chief Executive Officer. Of course, we're talking about the fight against corruption, the challenges that the EACC finds, and of course also the successes. Even if it took 14 years, the EACC finally got justice delivered for the people of Kenya when a ruling, of course, is issued saying that you are right. These houses belong to the people of Nairobi through the county government. Good morning, 27 minutes to 8 o'clock.
.9 Spice FM, Mombasa.
All right. All the way from Juja Road to Pangani, we have a situation this morning. It's a bit heavier than usual for traffic this hour, but this is what we see. It is Friday. It is the end of the month. So we expect what we see on the roads today, getting into the weekend. On Gong Road, it's actually smooth. It's actually moving quite smoothly at the junction mall all the way down. But right around Dagoretti Corner, there seems to be a bit of a sluggish move there. Drive safely, folks, is what we're asking. The fog is quite low in certain parts of the city, around Kangemi, and then of course along Mombasa Road. In some points it is low, so of course traffic is moving a lot slower than usual. The thicker super highway today already messed up on traffic very, very slowly. And again today, interestingly enough, we see an accident right in the CBD on the same Haile Selassie Avenue as yesterday. We don't know what the problem was, but it has slowed down traffic as well. Approach with caution until that situation is taken care of. We'll let you know more of what we see as the minutes tick by. Spice FM KE is how you can reach us. Good enough though that the bypasses, being the eastern and southern bypasses, are open today, and Langata Road is not doing too badly either. Do let us know what you see, and let's keep it moving.
Intelligent humor and nostalgic music.
Yes, that's part of the show. Yeah!
94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
If I were to ask, is it possible to put, say, a figure or a monetary value to the assets that have so far been recovered by your department, or in volume the number of assets or properties that have been recovered by your department?
Good. I was ready for that question, fortunately. First of all, you need to understand that most of the gains of the commission are not monetary in terms of hard cash. It's monetary in form of land assets. And this has been done, or we have managed to achieve that through what you call civil recoveries. These are properties that we felt that they were wrongly acquired. People misused their position. You know, there was a time in this country when the so-called grabbing of land was more like it was legal.
It was a national
and people used to take pride of that, that I'm a connected person in government, this is my farm. But this country, I think, and it's a sign that in this country that the fight against corruption is succeeding, albeit very slowly. Because for those of us who are quite old, with my counterpart,
Quite old.
but he may not, sometimes when you get old, you are in denial. There is this saying which says life starts at 40. And I don't believe in that. I say aging starts at 40. Yeah. So what happened during those days, people used to be allocated farm, plots and whatever. So we, as a commission, we have done a lot of what you call civil suits for recovery. We've managed two ways. Either the allottees accept to enter into an alternative dispute resolution and they hand over the property. There are some that refuses. There was a case in Kisumu. Somebody took a piece of land belonging to railway, and we won that case. We took it back. I don't want to mention names. And there are others that we managed to recover through ADR. So a good example I'll give you of our recovery and quantification of amount. Next to Air Center in Kilimani, there's a very big portion of land there that somebody took it, and literally that land belongs to Nairobi University of Nairobi.
Yep.
But you see, University of Nairobi is like railway. They have parcels of land all over. But maybe they don't have the capacity to do. So this fellow saw it, prime land, he took it. And we managed to get back the land. We had a ceremony, we handed over that plot to University of Nairobi. It's a very prime piece of land. Along, once you cross Yaya as you're heading to Lavington, it is just short of the Shell petrol station that used to be called Engen those days. Big piece of portion. That land alone is worth about 2 billion. And this is when it was recovered. Maybe if you bring value now, it will go beyond 2 billion. You know, in this country, the value of land does not go down. In Naivasha, opposite Delamere Farm, we have Kari, Nowadays they call it KALRO, the Kenya Greater Research Institute, the old days.
Yeah.
We have recovered almost 1,800 acres of land that were grabbed by powerful barons during the previous regimes. And that land alone with our valuer, because ESCC we have land valuers as part of investigation, because sometimes when they go, you find like this issue of the National Lands Commission, people have been charged. You need to have facts from a valuer says this land was overvalued.
Yeah.
That one alone is about 8.7 billion.
I'm sure there's a list as you continue.
Yeah, no, I'm just highlighting the
highlighting some of, and this is the thing, because it's highlighted. Do you have a mechanism for sharing this information with the public? And is there something like that allows for such a thing?
The mechanism is here. The CEO is here being interviewed.
He's giving the information.
Sure, but then in the event that you're not here, how do we know? That's the thing.
I think one thing that I will accept before the public as they listen to me, I think ESCC, we are very poor in communication.
Absolutely.
Not poor, but very poor. We have a lot of gains, but we don't know how to shout about.
You don't shout about your gains.
Yes.
And we have other guys who have nothing, but they know how to shout.
Very good, because now in the absence of such information sharing, don't you agree? The members of the public will say you're actually not doing anything because you're not telling us about what you do.
Now, this is the problem. But of course, in our website, and this is a good feedback, because when I live here, my head of communication is going to be in trouble. I will say,
didn't know.
Did you hear what they told me and what they asked me? We have, surprisingly, even the judiciary itself, we have managed to recover their land in Kisumu, which was grabbed, and it's valued at 200 million. In Eldoret town, we have managed to recover land belonging to the judiciary, which was also grabbed. And we have Racecourse Primary School in Nairobi, which is about 700 million. Kenya Railway property. I think all of you know Uhuru Garden, Mombasa. Hapo kwa Mapembe.
Yes.
Those tasks.
Yes.
Hiyo kiwanja yote.
Opposite Wimpy.
Opposite Wimpy. All that green, those big coastal trees. That place had been grabbed.
It had gone.
It had gone. People had title, and we went with them step by step until we recovered that land.
So when you go to these people who've grabbed, and of course the ones that agree that, okay, mumenishika ni sawa, chukueni shamba, what kind of deal do you enter into those with them? Are you actually entering a deal and saying just bring back and walk scot-free?
Yes, there are two options. Usually the media ask me, why do you let them go scot-free?
Yes.
There are two issues here, Eric. We need to separate civil matters and criminal matters. If it's a case of corruption and you want to enter into agreement that I want to be pardoned, that one is not alternative dispute resolution. That is plea bargain. Even the Americans, one of the reasons why this country there's backlog of cases is we have never utilized the plea bargain system.
But we have it.
And it's always been there.
It is there, but it's not pronounced. Now the DPP, Nurdin Haji, he is very aggressive. He even moves to areas to propagate about plea bargain. Plea bargain, there's a misconception. Plea bargain is on crime, criminal, economic crime.
Right.
Or even the other crime that the DCI handles. A young man has been caught. In America, they do it. You've been caught, you've stabbed somebody, and then taken to court. The lawyers are told, this case is 10 years. Can he enter plea bargain? We'll give him 4 years.
Yeah.
And it's a
Plead
way...
guilty, we finish up this case.
You don't waste the time of the court.
Yes.
Yes.
And you agree, you start serving.
Right.
Instead of 10 years, you get 4 years. It's one way of addressing backlog all over the world. Here we have capacity problem with judiciary, and we don't.
And yet we are not using.
It would be the way to go to use.
So, but then there's
that is criminal.
Yes.
Now civil.
So when we talk of criminal in terms of corruption, I'll give you a good example. You've caught a county official. They purport to have done a contract to supply vehicles, and they were not supplied, and they paid. That's a criminal aspect of a corruption case. Criminal aspect. That one, plea bargain, is not ESCC. It is the DPP.
It's the DPP.
Because by the time we take that file and tell the DPP, charge this person, when the DPP charge that person, now it's the DPP and that the lawyer of that person to say, do you want to go and plea bargain? But what we have experienced is that a number of these culprits are mistaken. They think that plea bargain Some of them even think nitarudisha nusu,
And then you
uachie mimi nusu na nisifungwe. There's nothing like
I
that.
continue with my life as
Yes.
normal.
Yeah. Now, for the civil, let me go back to your question. Civil is, I was given this plot because I was connected.
Yes.
Or because maybe your father was a minister or a powerful figure.
Or the mayor.
Yeah, the mayor. And then you've been given this plot. ESCC writes to you and say, look, this plot was illegally allocated to you. Can you report to ESCC and write a statement to bring us this document, this and that and that? ESCC will tell you, because we also have a challenge. We don't want to enter into lengthy court processes. I've told you about the Woodley, 14 years. So you're told by the ESCC, in front of your lawyer, are you willing to surrender this land? Because there's no criminal aspect there. You are allocated. Say, I will surrender. But you can also see when I was being given this plot, I paid these charges to the lands ministry. I paid this to city council those days. Can I get back my money? And we say yes.
So the ESCC now gives back the money.
It doesn't give back the money. There's a process within the government.
Okay.
And then you surrender the title is taken to the lands ministry, and we process new title. If that land belongs to an institution, public institution, we also bring on board that public institution. What do you have about this particular land? And they said, we have this and that and that. We start processing the title until we either hand over silently.
Ensure the whole thing is complete.
Yes, we hand over the titles to the institution, say, Nairobi University, this is your title. And we say, we are done. So, are we together there?
Yes.
Yeah. For the issue of things like when you look at schools, school land was grabbed, we revert. And one good thing about it now, do you know who is one of our biggest client in reclaiming illegally allocated land or stolen land? It is the Ministry of Land itself. Yeah, they write to us. These titles were illegally acquired. We want to put this institution. Can you recover?
Right.
One good thing, one governor, no name, he came to our office. You know, quite a number of them don't want to come to our office. They think that we want to arrest them.
Right.
Or you might enter, not walk out.
Yes.
Okay.
This governor came and said, we have this land here. This land is meant for public use. They were grabbed these pieces. How can you help us? And we told him, thank God, you are the first governor to walk into this office and tell us that you want to be assisted. Now we are in the process of recovering those pieces of land. Yeah.
What about
So these are some of the silent gains that the ESCC has done. Unfortunately, they were, okay, we are to blame. Maybe we are not smart enough in our
communication of the same?
Yes.
No,
Yes,
in fairness, some of them
there
are
are a lot of gains.
highlighted well, like the University of Nairobi one was covered, you know, probably because it's in Nairobi. Also in the cases of Kisumu and the railway land, we've seen a lot of these things coming up. It's probably because of the lack of sustainable communication.
I think also the other side that I need to talk about, we do a lot of disruption, but disruption is more based on undercover and intelligence work.
Right.
And is not very pronounced. You know, 4 months ago, we averted theft of almost 2.8 billion shillings. That everything was being cooked
and ready to go.
And the payment was being processed. Luckily, the head of that state corporation came and said, I'm in trouble. I'm being forced to pay this money. Can you give us a brief?
Wow.
We worked out, and I even cooperated with the DCI, and we wrote a good letter was written by the DCI through the input from our side. Said, you are the one handling this case. And here I'm trying to clear the issue that we are at competition with the DCI.
Right.
We work very well with the
Together.
DCI. Yeah.
Is there any kind of protection for people who would essentially come out and give information about things that they see happening where they work, for example, and want to essentially blow the whistle? Is there any kind of protection for them?
We do the protection in how we handle the matter, because we have an intelligence unit which deals with the intelligence and undercover operations. So first of all, if you want to volunteer that kind of information, you'll not even come to ESCC.
Right.
We will meet you somewhere. Yeah. And if the informant is maybe a man, we'll even send a very good looking lady to go and meet him So when they are talking there, you may think that this is a boyfriend or a girlfriend.
You'll never tell.
We don't want to.
The man is spilling the beans.
So we have the once that is one of the mechanisms of protecting informants.
Right.
And we make sure that sometimes we are even forced to abandon a case if we feel that we will not be able to protect the informant. Yeah.
But Mbarak, I want to ask this question.
Take a short break.
Yes.
City, and then we come back at 10 minutes to 8 o'clock. We'll take a very quick break and then come back and continue with the question from City Muga.
Yes.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise. Yeah.
You're listening to Spice FM.
Set up special courts to deal with matters of appeals regarding electioneering in this country. If the Chief Justice were to set up similar courts using specific timelines and regulations to deal with corruption cases, would this help your fight against corruption? Or is the Chief Justice actually in a position legally to do so?
I will not answer on behalf of the Chief Justice, but I will put a suggestion like any other Kenyan. That's a very good observation because when the elections were over, there was a problem of the backlog of those petitions. And they set up that was it a 1 year period or 6 months? And they managed to hit the target.
Yes.
My own suggestion is that there should be a criteria where the judiciary, DPP, DCI, and ESCC, we have a meeting and a proposal that certain cases of a certain magnitude, they must be dealt within a specified period. Because I'll tell you one thing. We also have foreign partners that we work with and the Kenyans in general. The issue is we are being told we have arrested. How many have we convicted? That is a question that is supposed to be, okay, people will say it is the DPP and judiciary. But I understand the DPP's position. The whole delay is on the judiciary side. And, okay, they say they have capacity problem. Like now they're saying even on budget. Like now we are having challenges in ESCC. Most of the cases in the appeal court, they are going to delay a lot because they say that they don't have judges, they don't have money to run those appeal court. So when you're talking of even having a system of dealing with the cases immediately, they are now talking of even delays in appeals. So what is happening if we can do that? Because can you imagine this country today if you have two powerful people who have been accused of corruption, they have been convicted and they are serving, let's say, in Kamiti, Manyani, or Shimolatewa. I can tell you that would be the biggest deterrent.
The message it sends will be
the
big.
message it sends will reverberate through the entire system.
ESCC, like now, people say, how many people have you convicted? Last year alone, and this is something that the public maybe is not aware. Last year alone, we had 51 conviction. 51 conviction. The only thing that people will say maybe they are low level cases. But then,
is it police officers
no,
caught on the road receiving bribes? Are those part of the 51?
Yeah, if you look at police case bribery as a small problem, I can tell you one thing. It is a menace that is a thorn in the flesh of every Kenyan who is using a road. Yeah. So if you look at it collectively, all those bribes, how much they are getting per year, how much inconvenience they are causing. If as much as you call it a small case, it's worth it to be convicted. But then what you can say is that those kind of cases, the way he has asked his question, we can do what categorization of corruption cases.
Yes,
we have court system that deals with petty corruption alone. We have middle level corruption. We have grand corruption. And seriously, if we go that way, we can make some gains. Because the most important thing is if we are able to get hold of this big fish, there'll be a message. The only problem I want to come back is that even what you call the petty corruption, about the 51 cases that we manage conviction, I have sampled one case, and you will see why judiciary is the one that is slowing down the fight against corruption.
And is that frustrating
Very frustrating
for you as a
yes,
commission?
Yes,
as
I
you
want to
look
give you
at it now?
give me an example. I want to give an example.
That one example, yeah?
Yes. There was a case where a certain state organization, that is mandated to collect some returns. They went to a certain company and said, you did not make returns for this and that. So the guy said they demanded a bribe of 50,000. And they alerted KCC those days. And then, not even KCC, I think it is Kenya Anti-Corruption Authority, CASA, not KCC. So a trap was set. These guys were arrested taking a bribe of 50,000 shillings, treated money. The case was 2002, Eric. It was concluded last year.
In 2019.
Why should a case of 50,000 bribe take 17 years? So if a case of 50,000 bribe is taking 17 years, Kamarer Dam will take how many years?
2050.
The governors we have charged will take how long?
How many years?
The ministers we have charged will take how many years? Then you come and say, DPP is not working, ESCC is not working.
The judiciary has also responded to this previously, and the Chief Justice himself has said, look, you're bringing a case, for example, the NYS case. One case, 17 accused. 17 accused, each of them comes to court with 2 lawyers. Even just mentions of those cases are taking forever. Why is it that you choose to consolidate cases like that?
Let me ask you. You have gone...
Taking an entire ocean to court.
It's not an
Instead
entire...
of just one
No,
big fish.
it's not an entire ocean. If all these people are implicated, what do? Why should you leave others? What if somebody asks you, what was the criteria of leaving 7 and taking 10?
taking 3.
What will you do? So these are some of the complex things. I understand where the CJ is coming from. I understand what he's talking about. But also, he also needs to understand on the investigative part of the case. So these are some of the things that need to be addressed. And this issue of saying shoddy cases, there are nothing called shoddy cases. We provide watertight cases. And I'll give you a good example. There's this case of Akasha. What happened in USA? They were jailed. What happened here? How were they extradited from Kenya to America?
To America.
Technically illegally.
It was illegally.
Illegally.
It was delayed
Was
in the
it
courts.
illegal, really?
Not illegally, but they were picked.
They were picked, yes.
Yes. Why were they picked?
But the
and-
court had not
No,
okayed it.
why were they picked and they have been charged
The
here?
hearing was still ongoing.
Let
No,
me
it
ask
was
the
taking
question.
time here.
No, the
No,
question is...
I want to answer your
I know-
question. by
I want to
asking
ask you a question.
Yes.
These people were in
court in Kenya.
Yes.
Yes.
How come a foreign jurisdiction came and picked them? That one you'll answer me later.
And they're already in jail.
Yes. But
and,
what?
now
Yes.
they have been jailed. How long did it take?
No.
Months.
I was actually
Months.
going with this. Did they have our other evidence other than the one we had in Kenya? Or did they use our evidence to convict them?
I won't go into those details, but
Yes.
but generally,
Yes.
Yes, those guys were under a judicial process here.
Yes,
For
they
extradition.
Why did these people come and pick them? It means what? Can you answer
They
that?
noticed that you're delaying.
No, other thing. Maybe they don't trust our system.
Yes.
No, they actually have no faith in our system. And they figured...
That these guys are not gonna
these
get the
fellows
job done at
But
the end
they
of the
had
day.
been accused. It wasn't
Right.
the first time they were in court. These cases had come and fizzled. And fizzled.
And these guys have been playing that business, this suspicion,
Yes.
for the last 25 years in this country.
So it's basically using the court system to evade justice.
I will not say that. I will not say that. But I'm saying
Yeah.
court delays. I'm not blaming the judiciary. I'm just saying
Processes.
court delays and the court process is too long for us to fight corruption effectively.
Is it suffice to say that if we're looking at this process and now want to be able to cut things off at both ends, that we'll see more convictions, we'll see or faster process of justice for some of these cases?
It's either way. When you are taking a court case when you take a case to court, there are two things: you win or you lose. It will be done very fast, and even when the court process is very fast, for the accused, if he's to be released, the better for him.
Yep.
Because it should take short time for him also to know.
Whether
Am
I'm in or out.
I guilty or not?
You're on that
So
monkey off your shoulder.
I am looking at it both on our side winning and on the side of the culprit winning. If we win, good message to the public that people are getting convicted, they are being jailed. On the other side, if the fellow is acquitted in a fair system, good for him. Why should you subject somebody?
It also shows that
for
justice is served.
These delayed court cases, they have also made people very poor.
Absolutely.
They are just using 10, 20 lawyers, and the people are forced even to sell. So a quick and effective judicial process will be one of the best message of fighting corruption.
There are people who have actually said, they've gone through that whole process. Like you've said, many of them have ended up poor, many of them have ended up under depression and completely frustrated, yet they are the accused. There are many times when people say that the accused are working with their lawyers and the judges to delay the cases. So when you come back out of the break and looking at traffic, we'll ask you that just to keep you a bit for about 10 minutes, just to finalize the question.
Okay, 5 minutes.
So that you can, just give us those, and then you tell us, of course, the other main gains that the EACC has had in the last, say, 5 years. This is a situation room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. At coming up to 8 o'clock, in the studio is Twali Mbarak. He's the Chief Executive Officer of the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission. We've been discussing the corruption in Kenya and the fight against corruption. Good morning.
Spice up your life.
All right. Let's take a look at how things may have changed on the roads this morning. Of course, in some parts of the city, quite a bit slippery, so people need to take care. It's, of course, Thika Road. Traffic all the way from Garden City is very slow, but it's moving. It's not that bad, though, when it's opened at certain parts. Of course, looking at Limuru Road today, getting into the city, not so bad. Juja Road, Pangani, it's traffic all the way through right now. Limuru Road this morning, all the way from the village market. And then also then looking at Ngong Road today, where we had a bit of a hold up right around the Dagoretti corner, is quite sluggish. Apart from that, it's the normal Friday morning musings in traffic. Let's see how that will open up in a short while. But for now, patience needs to be exercised. Remember, fog lights up in some parts of the city coming from Westlands and also Mombasa Road. It is quite low today so that you can avoid any accidents. Spice FM KE, just let us know what you see and we'll keep people moving.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
To take an extra 5 minutes with us, so you can just give us, that whole bigger picture. You were telling us about the gains of the EACC. So you told us about the 51 convictions in the last 1 year. What are the main gains, apart from now, of course, the asset recovery, which is very good. You're recovering land, bringing it back to the public. Those convictions, well, let's not talk about the size of the convictions, but what other gains do you have?
We need to understand that our mandate, other than law enforcement, we are also mandated to take what you call prevention and education and public awareness. So we have several activities that we do. Of course, Kenyans would like to see people in court only. But at the end of the day, the prevention is the best strategy. And we have what you call education department. We have a prevention directorate with a full director. And they have done a lot in terms of system review and what you call corruption risk assessment. And we also do what you call, we have integrity clubs for school children and try to talk to them. On system review, we make a lot of gains. And I'll give you a good example of a system review that, had it been implemented, it could have averted a lot of loss of
money,
big amount of money. When there was NYS 1, EACC went to NYS. They did a system review, comprehensive system review. And the report came out with suggestion that NYS must be autonomous, free from the Ministry of Devolution. Because they looked at the system and they saw there was a lot of ambiguity in procurement, in payment. The top management of NYS was answerable to parallel line of reportings, all those things. When that report was submitted, the same devolution ministry thrashed that report for interest known to themselves. Then NYS2 took place. Now, after NYS2 took place, it is at this time that the NYS is implementing the system review report of ESCC, and now NYS is autonomous. So, and we have a lot of areas that we have done the same kind of things. One of the best way of preventing corruption in public offices is automation. You reduce the human interaction. Things like e-citizen, things like police clearance certificate being done online. When you are paying for land rates to be done online. Most of those recommendations were done by ESCC. Unfortunately, the public doesn't know that.
Yes.
And we are able to prevent a lot of things in terms of automation of services. The other thing that ESCC has done is we do a lot of disruption. I've talked about it. You remember sometimes people are trying to do something and we get information and we write to those organizations and we are able to avert losses of huge amount of money. I talked about the 2.8 billion, one of the state corporation. We managed to avert a loss of about 3.8 billion in the correctional services. And in fact, the file is with the DPP now. These are people who wanted to buy some security equipment, but if you look at it critically, it was going to be air supply. and we managed to contain that. We have sat down. There are a lot of pending bills, like in the Ministry of Correctional Services. We had a multi-agency team composed of DCI, ESCC, Audit, and the Ministry of Correctional Services from the direction of the Permanent Secretary, Zainab Hussein. And we had a complete review of the pending bills worth 6.2 billion shillings. And the report came out and said these are questionable payments and they should not be paid. We've talked, as much as we are now doing something about the Nairobi County, the governor is charged. We are still investigating some of the key officers in the county, and we have averted quite a number of loss of amount of money within the many counties that was out to be siphoned through dubious and dummy tenders. Yeah, but because when you disrupt, most of the time you don't arrest anybody. And it doesn't come to the public attention.
Right.
So people don't see that. People want to see money has been stolen, then people
Somebody's
are
arrested
taken
and
court.
sent to jail.
And that is the worst thing, because recovery is
Taking to court takes-
recovery is impossible.
The
court process is long. The money has gone.
Disruption is actually even better.
Yeah. If you
you've saved us from losing that money.
Yes, if you look at Goldenberg, how much was recovered other than the Grand Regency? Nothing. The NYS scandal 1, 2, how much was recovered? Nothing. So prevention is the way forward. And our request is that in the long run, we hope that we'll get more funding so that we can strengthen the prevention department, the education department, of course, enforcement. And lastly, from your advice, I'll have to go and work out on our communication strategy.
Please do. On that, we can at least follow up on, really. Please do.
Thank you very much for coming this morning, Bwana Talib Mbarak, the CEO of the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission. Today, we wanted to hear from you to understand what the ESCC has been doing. We'll invite you again so we can now look at case by case, taking specific focus into certain issues. For example, today we didn't even look at the Leadership and Integrity Act, and the Chapter 6 of the Constitution, and what ESCC should do or is doing to ensure that we have people of leadership and of integrity in our positions of leadership. We'll invite you again so that you can come.
Thank you, Eric.
Asante sana. You're catching a flight shortly. We wish you a safe flight and a good time.
Thank you.
Asante sana. This is a Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. We've been having in the studio Talib Mbarak, Chief Executive Officer of the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission. And then, of course, we'll be continuing the conversations going forward. Good morning. It's 7 minutes past 8.
Spice up your life. This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latif, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up.
87.9, 102.5 in Kisumu, 96.0 in Nakuru, 96.7 Eldoret, Nyeri 90.9, 97.7 in Malindi. And of course, we live stream the show every morning on Spice FM KE, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, as well as www.spicefm.co.ke. We promise that in this hour, we're going to be talking again about Kenya's preparedness for the coronavirus, should it hit. Ndu, are we ready? Are we not?
Well, I think the answer to that already is a resounding no. If we want to look at it and look at all the PR that has been dealt in the last couple of days and running after ourselves and running after heads, running after tails, and to say this is what would happen in case. No. I think it's very clear that around the world, what has been done so far, even by those in which we see to have basically all their systems in place to make sure that such a thing could be taken care of and abated, we still have infections in those countries, or we still have cases, whether it be 1, 2, or 15. However, they have taken measures to make sure that this does not get to a situation that then they're unable to handle. Is Kenya ready? Of course, there's all talk that Kenya is, and coming from the Ministry of Health, things have been done, measures have been taken, put in place. Words have been said to make sure that we can handle the matter should it happen. But obviously, just coming from what members of the public have said, coming from what we've seen to be the case, we don't have a handle on this. And I think that it's time that we move from talking about it to actually doing something about it. The adage is that drastic times call for drastic measures. And many have said that we haven't reached drastic times. If you just want to look at Kenya, we have not seen that there have been any confirmed cases in the country. The very fact that that plane landed in Nairobi 24 plus hours ago means that you're going to raise the panic levels of fears of many people, not because these people are coming into the country, but because people are afraid that measures have not been taken to deal with any cases that could land here by virtue of that plane landing in this country. And that is what people are afraid of. Has enough been done? Is it efficient? Is it adequate? Is it expedient in measure? No. People don't feel that way. Apart from people not feeling that way, the evidence on the ground is very clear that these measures have not been put in place. When you want to look at the issue of self-quarantine, how are we sure? Who's taking this information? Who is monitoring? Who is making sure? Nobody's raised their hand to say. We had our members of parliament yesterday talking and taking certain people to task and saying, look, this should not have happened. There should be a hands-on effort. There should be a collective effort to make sure that something is being done. And we can see very clearly that there is no collective effort. People are running around chasing their tails in this case. What if there was a confirmed case? And then what? The way this thing has gone, where it has reached now, is enough to panic. And I'm saying very clearly, all flights to and from China should be stopped. When we're talking about self-quarantine, throw that out the window. Anything we need now in terms of quarantine needs to be government-monitored quarantine to make sure that we're handling this thing with the most drastic of measures. Anything else below that is child's play.
So flights outside China.
Stop it.
Flights coming in from China. Stop the flights coming in from China.
As a first measure, before we even start anything else. And I'm looking at M&E in this case, monitoring and evaluation is very poor at this rate because, again, we had people who may have, presented with symptoms here and there. You, Eric, told us yesterday about, cases in the case that was in California. They knew where he landed. They knew who he was in contact with.
That was the Shanghai one.
In Shanghai, right? Yes. Okay. They knew whom he was in contact with. They They knew where he had his last meal. They knew which taxi or transport that he had taken. They knew who he spoke to, whose hand he shook, and where he slept. They had all of this information. Are they any more special than what happens here? In this case, yes, because they have the systems in place, not because they can or cannot. They had systems in place that are able to monitor, and that way then you're able to share relevant information to make sure then that you have a handle on the issue.
You know, despite all these measures that these countries who have the means have put in place, they still have
infections.
Yes, they do. Now, that is why it becomes imperative for us to understand the seriousness of it. If despite and in spite of all these measures that have actually been put in place, yes, you hear of a reduction of infections, the death toll, it isn't, let's put this way, there is a greater increase in infections than there are in death tolls, but you keep hearing of cases appearing every other day across the world. And these are with measures taken. Now, imagine a situation where there are no measures taken, or if the measures that have been taken are inadequate.
And then you do have a case. This is the thing.
There's a lot of panic, guys.
Yes, as there should be.
If we had one case in Kenya, there'd be so much, just judging by the kind of panic that you guys are exhibiting this morning, there'd be so much more panic if there was just one case, other case confirmed in Kenya. But I'm looking at the 48 countries where there is a coronavirus outside China. 48 countries around the world, right? Confirmed cases, 4,437 confirmed cases outside China. 357 people have recovered, 67 people have died outside China. Of course, the bulk of those are in South Korea, Japan, Italy, and Iran. These other countries, Sri Lanka, Romania, Norway, North Macedonia, Nigeria, Nepal, Holland, Georgia, Estonia, Egypt, Denmark, Cambodia, Brazil, Belgium, one case. We are not hearing that these countries have, shut down their country from the rest of the world. Oh, they are saying, there's no movement.
True.
Oh, they're saying everybody should be put into quarantine. But this is the kind of thing that I'm hearing you guys say.
No.
That
That's
even
what you're
before we
hearing.
have one
you're hearing.
confirmed case, even before we have one confirmed case, let's first of all say that
Do we
all
need to
flights
have a
coming
case, Eric?
from China, let's stop all the
No,
flights
do
from
we
China.
need to have a
Why don't
case?
we stop all the flights from all these 48 countries then?
This is the problem.
The
because you
epicenter
want
of
to
the
wait
disease.
until something happens before you actually do something about it.
Eric,
and I
the
think I would say that's what
epicenter of the
dogs are.
disease is China. The cases that are being talked about in Japan are being attributed to the Diamond Princess cruise ship.
Yes.
Okay? Meaning there was a place which had a preponderance of people who exhibited the infection. So now, if you talk about the high rates of infection in Japan, they're tracing it. They're saying this is where the problem began. The proximity to China and the borders being shut stands to reason.
Yep.
If there's an epicenter, then you don't really want a situation. Now, it's the preventative approach to it. It's the alarmist perspective, I agree with you, Eric, is misplaced. It doesn't help because when you're alarmist, you don't even think straight. But precaution, prevention is important. We don't have to wait to have the first or second case for us to understand the seriousness of it. We have examples of countries that are taking this thing seriously. Or we have examples of people who didn't take it seriously, like Iran.
And voila.
Yes, the horse has bolted, they're now chasing it. All right? Saudi Arabia, who didn't take chances, simply cancelled visas for the Hajj. Cancelled. No chances being taken here. Why? Because they've understood. You don't want to wait for disaster to strike for you now to move into action. Don't wait until you get to that position. That really is the argument. Don't wait to have a situation in your hands. That's really it.
That argument is valid. But Ndu's point is, let's first of all stop all flights coming out of China.
Which are some of the measures that some of these countries
Right.
that we are looking at actually took. And this is what we're saying.
But,
yes, absolutely.
But Ndu, you have not said let's stop flights from South Korea, from Japan, from Italy, from Iran.
because you must
There are many cases there. Why are you only singling out China? So China is handling this particular case, right? The flights that are coming out of China are not coming out of Wuhan. Mm-hmm. There's nobody who is leaving Wuhan, or especially that province. Which province that? Is it Hubei or Hebei? One of those.
Hubei.
Right?
Hubei.
There's no one who's coming out of that particular province.
But
So
China is on lockdown.
it's on lockdown.
The
So by the
country
time
is
these
on-
flights are leaving Guangzhou, the people have been screened,
You know
and
this?
severally screened. Yes, we know this because we are already seeing that's what is happening in China.
Actually,
So if we say that we stop the flights from China, then we are going to have to expand and say let's stop flights from 48 48 countries around the world, and the list is growing. So tomorrow we shall say even Tanzania, if there's a confirmed case in Tanzania, close our border with Tanzania because of one case.
No, I think, of course,
this is the level of panic
I
I'm
think,
saying
I think
it's a
you
bit
need to,
too much.
it needs to operate within reason, again, because of the fact that this country is the epicenter of this disease. If you want to look as though a measure is being set into place, you're looking at tens of thousands of the infections having come out of this one country. And I'm saying at that point, because of the numbers that you're seeing coming out of there, shut it down. And again, you look at countries whereby an individual who is infected in 75% of the cases, in countries where you find infected cases, these are not nationals of these countries. These are people who may have traveled from, again, this China to that country. This is what over time. Over time.
Yes.
So you're actually not aware of when the infection took place. Right? You don't know this.
Yes.
And again, of course, what
Which is
we're
why
seeing,
you're not saying you can't shut down the world.
No, you can't shut down the world, but I'm saying in this case, because of the fact that you're dealing with people coming out of the epicenter, whether there's lockdown, whether there is no lockdown, that is a measure that needs to be put in place. The people who put in this measure, they were not stupid when they did it. They were not thinking, all right, maybe, well, they could have gone anywhere. No, they're saying at this point, where the bulk of the cases is domiciled, where the bulk of the case originated from, let's take that out of the equation for now. And that is what you were dealing with when you say shut down flights. Secondly, when you're talking about quarantine, this thing of self-quarantine is just not going to work. It is ridiculous in nature. That's what I'm saying. A measure needs to be put in place. If you tell me that there is government-monitored quarantine for people, don't tell them, okay, welcome into Nairobi.
That I agree with you wholeheartedly.
Welcome into Nairobi.
Yes.
And then as you go home, make sure you stay home for 14 days. Who's checking? Who's calling the shots? Who is making sure? Who is monitoring? Who is evaluating? Nobody.
It needs to be managed better.
It needs to be managed,
for more
period. Not
confidence.
even better. It needs to be managed
They can
from
argue
the
that they're
beginning.
managing it.
No, they could argue, but it would be a really leaky argument because it doesn't make sense at all. What if something were to happen? And this is the thing. By virtue of the fact that you're working on disaster management, you're dealing with the what if. The what if is what is rippling panic throughout the country. Now, when you manage the what if, that is what you do by putting measures in place. And I am saying at this point, the what ifs that millions of Kenyans have right now needs to be managed. We can't have this nonsense that we see of nobody really knows what's going on. Okay, there are flights coming in, there are no flights. All right, there's one flight per week, but we're not going to let it happen until no. Look at Japan, for example. They're not joking. Schools shut down until April. We're not going to deal with it. Olympic Games that have never been cancelled in their history, apart from when there was a war in one particular country. They say, you know what? Forget it. Say whatever you want to say. Shut it down.
And I can understand why Japan would do that.
The Hajj,
900
Saudi Arabia.
cases is already a growing number of cases.
The Hajj, easily 1 billion people traveling to Saudi Arabia every year. They've said, we're not even giving you visas.
Yeah.
Deal with whatever you want to deal with. You want to call us what you want to call us. We are not taking chances.
And that is understandable. In fact, there's no backlash on that.
They told you all this.
It's reported. This is what they said. Saudi Arabia said. This is
Do
what
what
they're
you
doing.
like.
Call us what you want.
Travel however you want.
Basically, they said this is the statement.
on,
No.
facetious.
Of course you are, but this is the statement that came out. They understand that there was going to be a lot of backlash, but they understood that there was going to be a lot of backlash. But the Minister for Foreign Affairs was very clear and said they're not going to be able. Any responses that came as a result of this cancellation of visas or denial of visas in the first place, they will deal with them as they come, but they're not allowing it. Sorry.
All right, give us the weather in Japan this morning. 22 minutes after 8 o'clock. This is a Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation.
Cranking up the volume.
It's the best.
With the greatest hits ever.
Fog really low in different parts of Nairobi today at 18 degrees. It's mostly cloudy conditions today, and we see highs of 27 and a chance of rain later on. Taking a look at the coast in Mombasa at 28 degrees, mostly sunny conditions, rain expected later with highs of 33. It's 19 degrees in Nyeri and showers expected later with highs of 26. In Kisumu at 23 degrees, showers expected with a high of 29. In Malindi at 29 degrees, showers expected there as well with highs of 32. 18 degrees in Nakuru, partly cloudy conditions, lows of 14 and highs of 28. In Eldoret, mostly sunny conditions. Of course, we see that changing with rain expected later and highs of 26 and lows of 13. Taking a look in East Africa in Dar es Salaam at 28 degrees, mostly sunny conditions today with highs of 33 and lows of 26. In Kampala, we will see cloudy conditions through the day. Thunderstorms expected later with highs of 26 and lows of 21. And finally in Lagos at 28 degrees, it's going to be a rainy day with highs of 36 and lows of 27.
You okay out there?
Intelligent humor and nostalgic music.
If you wanna be with me, baby, there's a price to pay. Tell me why ain't nothing but a ball.
Yes, that's part of the show. Yeah!
94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
Nduoko is saying a couple of things that she'd like to see done immediately. First of all, this flights coming in from China, stop them immediately.
Even if it's just to manage public expectation, manage it.
Just
Even
stop the
just for
flights.
that, just for that, because this panic that we're talking about, which is of course, we can't say that it's not founded. Of course, it would be founded because people panic for different reasons. Somebody sees a plane landing with 239. Of course, it's not to say that it's just Chinese who could be infected. Anybody, as we've seen outside of mainland China, we have very many people having been infected, and they're not necessarily Chinese, right? And that, I think we need to make that very clear, that it's not just that you had a plane coming out of China
Bringing
that
us
meant
Chinese.
it was carrying 239
but that is
Chinese
what has been
nationals.
implied.
This is the thing, and I'm saying at this point we need to make it very clear that it could not necessarily the case. So I think at this point, panic, you need to allay people's fears. And if just for that alone, look, the people in Wuhan who spoke to us a week ago, and they said, you know what?
If you allay people's fears by, immediately taking that drastic action and saying, stop the flights.
It's clearly not immediate because it's been going on for the last 2 months and that has
But
not
also,
been
you're
done.
not stopping other flights. So flights coming out of Hong Kong, for instance, Kenya Airways is still flying to Hong Kong. It's still getting, people. There are very many flights that are
Again,
leaving
because
China
these are not
and
the
going to other
epicenter.
parts
And
of
I
the
said it
country.
very clearly. My basis for that argument is because we are looking at the epicenter of a disease. Those
The
areas
epicenter
are not
of this disease
epicenters.
You don't
is
do. Most-
Henan province
in China. Yes.
Most-
Now,
In China.
if the epicenter of this thing is in Eldoret, you don't look at the entire country as an epicenter.
Why not?
Because it
Kwale,
isn't.
Kilifi is not close to Eldoret. It is far from Eldoret.
You have countries who've shut down the entire border with their country.
Yes,
Yes.
and those are the countries that are nearing that country, and you can understand
And
why.
who have interactions with that country.
Russia closing off its border, you can understand. Japan, South Korea, those
Tibet,
countries that
all those places.
Those ones you can understand. The countries that are
Even
close of
India.
proximity.
Yeah, I'm saying in this case that one of the things that causes panic is that people are not really sure what's going on. And in this case, if you're going to manage this, allay people's fears. And at this point, when you have a plane landing, you need to say, okay, well, in this case, for the period that we have this, shut it down. Shut it down.
The
For now.
suggestions you're making are sound, but it doesn't allay fears. It exacerbates it. Because if you do that, much as it's a sound decision, the message you're sending is that that plane was full of people who were infected.
Who are infected with
Exactly,
coronavirus.
but
Yes.
by letting them land, you also say the same thing.
but
this is the
no.
thing, because you have students who
But
are in
Ndu-
Wuhan, for example,
Yes,
who are
yes.
making the plea and saying, "How?
Bring us
If
home."
you want to look at the optics of this, you are making a plea and they're saying, "Please bring us home," right? You don't bring them home,
The
but
optics
at the
are bad
same
on
time,
that.
the optics are very bad. But at the same time, we're allowing planes land here, and you are telling them that okay, we're not going to bring you home, but guess what?
But you know
we're going
what?
to
It's
let a
because
lot
they're
of
in
people
Wuhan.
who are
This
landing
particular
fly
plane-
in
This
here.
particular plane
emanated
has-
from Guangzhou.
Yes.
No, absolutely, but
Precisely.
again,
Not who,
The passengers, none of them was in Wuhan. It's not brought in people from
these
Wuhan.
students themselves told us about their inability to move out of even the towns they were in.
Yeah.
So we know for a fact that the people who came on that plane had not not traveled from the place that is at the center of this disease. Number
That
one.
day, uh-huh.
Number two, not many flights are direct from China to Kenya. They will go through Dubai,
Other
they'll
countries.
go
Even
through
worse.
Amsterdam. Now, yes, I think you know where I'm going with this.
Even worse.
Yes. Now you tell me, do you have quarantine facilities at these airports?
You don't.
Since we're having this discussion,
do they?
You don't.
If no, they don't. If indeed we understand the manner in which this disease can be spread, and we believe it to be true from what we're told, then the understanding would be simply by intermingling with people at places where people change flights and move around. You could argue that those huge centers are perhaps a greater danger than a group of people simply come, because the mixture of people is vast.
Exactly. So now them landing in Kenya.
The question
was
I've been
there any
asking
kind
since
of
morning
M&E?
is how
Was there
many
any
flights are leaving China on a daily basis, going
No,
wherever?
Eric, I think you missed the point. Do not moving from that point.
Look here.
That plane has landed in Kenya with 239
it came from
passengers,
China
and it
direct.
came from China.
No, you don't.
How
look,
many
and
people who
if we're
have-
going to
how
go
many
with that
people have left
argument, if
China
you're going
and
to
are
go with that
arriving in-
argument as well, in terms of asking whether we're prepared, do you know who did they interact with along lines? Did you know maybe the way that where they have gotten off or come? Look, I'm telling you,
I can assure
from the
you,
point,
just because
from
they've come
the
from
point
China,
of where
those records
people,
are available.
where with the Ministry of Health here.
No, you cannot travel on a plane.
You will get that information.
and certain details.
You're not
about
looking
you
at
are
very
not
many
available.
points. You're basically saying that you've left Guangzhou, you have arrived in JKIA. So where were you? You were in Guangzhou a couple of hours ago. Where were you before you boarded the flight? Now it's able to trace back. How many flights are arriving at JKIA on a daily basis from other parts of the world whose passengers emanated from China?
How many
Yes, tell us,
flights
how
are
many?
coming?
Very many.
I actually don't know, but if you've
There are
ever
very
been to
many.
Guangzhou, you will know that this China Seas airline, what's it called again?
China Southern Airlines.
Exactly. Is not the only airline that emanates from Guangzhou.
Yes.
Every other major airline in this country travels there, and some
World.
of them come to Kenya. So, what you're asking, if we're to follow your argument, is to stop all flights.
Yes.
Not this one.
Shut down
all.
our airport.
No,
all.
that's not what I'm saying.
No, but it amounts to that.
I am saying their expectations and optics at this point that really, really, really need to be managed. At the point whereby we were yesterday, everybody was up and saying, you know what does this actually mean? In the time that we're not sharing information, this is what happens. Speculation is rife, and people are very, very worried about what the case may be,
Yes.
especially in light of the fact that you have people, look, Wuhan, wherever you want to call it, all not China, as far as some people are concerned. Now, if you're not spreading that, if you're not giving the right, if we are not giving the right information, if the ministries tasked with this kind of with this mandate are not giving the right kind of information, this is what you have. You have panic. You do, and that has to be managed. And I'm saying at this point, even beyond now the shutting down of flights, okay, they're here. They are here. The information that we're being given or the next moves that we're being told to make are ridiculous at best. Self-quarantine is a notion
that has been
will
handled
not
was wrong.
work.
You know,
it will not work.
It was wrong
in any way whatsoever.
What I am agreeing with you wholeheartedly is the quarantine part, right? And I'm saying yes, the quarantine should be handled much better. You should have a way in which you give confidence to the people that the government is on top of this, is in charge. It knows this quarantine is taking place, and these are 14 days, and therefore we're being cleared after the 14 days. The government knows how many people have arrived at JKIA on a daily basis whose origin was any part of China or any part of these countries that now have reported cases of coronavirus. Now, our government is not giving us that information or creating that confidence. What I am disagreeing with you is this issue of saying cancel all flights. That is what I'm saying. That is actually exacerbating the panic. There's already panic in the country. There's it's too much panic. Let's not, blow up this panic.
I think we also
by
run the
saying
risk.
let's shut down. We can't shut down. We are an economy that depends on others coming in and going out. We cannot say we shut down. We have 48 countries around the world that have confirmed cases of coronavirus. If we were to follow that argument to its logical conclusion, would therefore say any country that confirms a case of coronavirus, no flight, no communication with that country going forward. That will be widespread panic.
I think we run the risk also of then being lackadaisical in this approach and then saying, okay, well, it's okay. For now, it's not so bad because we're in a place where, no confirmed cases, so we'll be fine. And I'm saying that, a lot needs to be done to maintain public confidence in the sense that a lot is actually being done. If it's not, start now. If information is not being shared, this is the time to start. I don't think we need to wait for a confirmed case. I don't think we need to wait until it gets home for something to be done, or at least better lines of management to be employed. This is clearly something that is look, it's taking the world by storm. And we can sit here in cocoons and say, okay, well, let's not panic. It's too much. It's really not here. It's not at our borders.
Let's be concerned.
We make the mistake that if
Let's
something
be
then
alert.
were to happen, you're going to have people running helter-skelter, my friend, and at that point, you're not going to be able to handle it.
Let's be concerned. Let's be alert. Let's be aware. Let's not panic. Because once we panic, like CT, you said, once we panic, we now start losing
logic goes out of the window completely.
And then we're not able to handle anything that comes at us from that point on.
In fact, ideally, the focus should be with every time we have such a situation, much as we point out the perceived ills, we also need to educate and say, folks, this is what we're seeing, but consider this other reality, okay? The reality around this virus is A, B, C, D. Yes, a mistake was made, as was quoted, it was quoted that one particular hierarchical government official said, but having apologized. No, yes, having apologized. Telling us measures are in place, that is nonsense. You need to be able to clearly state that
These are the measures.
yes, the measures we've put in place
And
are
telling
as
us we
follows.
have
1, 2,
11
3.
beds. We have an 11-bed capacity at Kenyatta National Hospital. That doesn't allay fears.
No, it
You're
doesn't.
thinking, oh my God,
God,
11.
only. No, you need to talk about this and you need to give more details and say, this is what we have, this is what we have,
Yeah.
in details. Then someone feels, yes, it has been taken care of.
It's 24 minutes to 9 o'clock. We'll open up the phone lines now. You can join the conversation. 0719 012 600.
All right, taking a look at Thika Road, getting into the city centre, a lot easier than it was before. We still have some traffic on Mombasa Road. It's moving a little smoother than it was previously. Coming out of Westlands and, of course, Langata Road. Langata Road today, getting to Bagathi, turning off into Bagathi, not so bad. You can get to the city a lot quicker. Getting into the CBD today will be an issue. Everybody is converging there. And, of course, we've had a couple of accidents there this morning. So nothing out of the ordinary right now. It seems to be flowing smoothly as best can be expected, unless something out of the ordinary does happen. And please, I expect you to let me know what that is. Spice FM KE, let us know what you see. Let's keep it moving this morning.
Breathing life into the 90s. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Unright. 94.4 Spice FM.
Hello.
Good morning.
Morning. How are you doing?
I'm fine, thank you. First, before I contribute,
Yes.
I need to make a congratulations to Spice FM.
Yep.
You are doing a good job. I think this now the radio that people should be listening to.
Thank you.
Indeed. Tell them. Tell them.
Say it again.
The only thing you are missing, that just like you told the CEO of the AACC. Hello.
Yes.
Yes.
Maybe you haven't made enough communication. People are not aware of Spice FM. Like maybe in the rural areas, we only listen to him in Nairobi and this town area. So you need also to market yourself very well.
Right. We hear you.
Yes. Now, when coming to the topic, I see what we are failing in Kenya. Our government is not serious with everything. You cannot go as a minister and tell people to go and quarantine themselves. That communication is very poor. And that person should not be even I think he should not be employed by the government. If you give a communication like that, it shows you are not serious on anything. Yeah, and again, we are not saying that Kenya should be closing all the borders or entries to any country or to every to flights from China. What we are saying is that we need to make some action that will show at least we are trying to prevent this thing getting into Kenya.
What would that action be, Marcel? If you were to take the action, if you were the Minister for Health, what would the action be?
I think when you are the Minister for Health, you know what to do. You are put there. The person putting you there knows what you should be doing. The one will not come to tell you what to do. We know what other countries are doing, like what Australia did yesterday. They are taking action to prevent it getting into their country. But you cannot tell us that people are coming from China. You haven't done anything. And you are telling them to put themselves in their houses. And you come to tell Wananchi that we have taken, we are serious on this, we are doing everything possible to prevent it getting into China. We will not take that for anything.
Thank you. Thank you, Marcel. Yeah. Joroge Nyeri, good morning.
Good morning, Alex.
Good morning to you, Joroge.
We are listening from Nyeri.
Karibuni sana.
I wanted to talk about coronavirus.
Go ahead.
Yes.
If ever coronavirus comes to Kenya, it will not be from China.
Uh-huh.
Because I think Chinese are taking, the measures they are taking, I think corona will come from these other countries that you are estimating, like Italy and USA.
Right.
Yeah, that is. I wanted to contradict with Duoko.
Thank you, Joroge.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. This is the situation room. This is Tilda. Tilda, good morning.
Hi, morning. So I wanted to contribute to this, the conversation on the coronavirus.
Yes.
So I think the approach the government is taking for self-quarantine in Kenya is very much ill-informed. I think if you look at what China is doing, with, the country of billions of people, when they're talking about self-quarantine, the people, your building manager is informed, you're not allowed to leave your apartment.
Yes.
Even your groceries are delivered, so you go and pick it there. But more than that, they're monitoring these things. They have apps that actually show within your radius people who are infected. They're able to track all of that. Us, we really don't have that. I mean, the people who arrived yesterday, as soon as they left immigration, pretty much, if they filled in that they're going to Kilimani and their destination was Kileleshwa, you wouldn't be able to find them.
True.
I think it's ridiculous what the government is doing.
Thank you, Tilda. Tobias in Eldoret, good morning.
Yes, good morning.
How are you doing?
I'm fine.
What do you have to say about this?
Okay, first of all,
Yes.
I think there's some measures that need to be taken very seriously. Let's say from all borders of the nations.
Which measures are those?
Okay, for example, the government should be strict in all flights that are coming in from all the foreign nations, and they should just be keen on everything that comes in from, let's say,
from outside the country.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much, Tobias. Musa in Nakuru, good morning.
Yes, good morning.
How are you doing?
I'm fine, thanks.
What do you say about our preparedness for coronavirus?
To hear what happened yesterday is shocking. Here in Nakuru, we hear of some Chinese who are already here, saying that they are expecting their colleagues in maybe 2 weeks. And they're also wondering what measures are there. Another thing is other countries are saying not if, but when. When it will arrive. So really when you hear them saying when, it's not about if, then I think we should take things more seriously.
More than we are doing now.
Yes. Because it's now about when.
It's about when, not if. Okay.
Thank you very much, Musa. Thank you, and have a good day in Nakuru.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
It's a matter of when, not if, right? Looking at how it has spread, 48 countries now outside China, the number of cases increasing, the number of people who are confirmed dead also increasing. Not confirmed dead, confirmed cases increasing rather, and the number of people who are dead also who are dying out of this increasing. So this is it's a big thing. We're still taking your call 0719-012-600. We're also getting in touch with some expert, a virologist who tell us about what they think we should be doing in terms of getting ourselves prepared and getting ourselves ready on this.
Well, absolutely. I think this is the thing. That's what we're saying. It's not about if it will come. If we're going to follow the pattern that it has been, it's not about will it, but when it does, are we ready for it? I think if we look at the statement that came out of the Federal Republic of Nigeria yesterday, when this case was found of an Italian man working in Lagos, it was after this had been found that they said, oh, actually, we have put in measures. The government of Lagos having said these are the measures that we've put in place in conjunction with the federal government, right? Now, before that, nothing was said. Nobody was told these are the measures. No. A case has been found, and then now we say this is what was done. And I don't think we should be doing that kind of backtailing with something that we've seen clearly, and the capacity that it has as a disease to spread in the manner in which it has been spreading. It needs to be upfront management. It needs to have proper monitoring. And I think you need to take a minute. Everybody needs to take a minute out and say, all right, guys, this thing that we're dealing with, these measures need to be put in place.
But also, are you seeing the kind of panic that is there across the country? Right? Everybody is just looking at 239 possible cases of coronavirus are in Kenya. There's about management of communication, and this is where it behoves the government to do a better job of that, of managing communication. It behoves all of us to also do a better job of that. When there's this kind of widespread panic, it also means that even we've just heard from Nakuru. There are some Chinese who are in Nakuru and they're saying, you guys, we're expecting our friends
guys
to come
are
in.
coming.
And it's a matter of when, not if. There's panic, and there's growing panic. If we get one confirmed case, I'm afraid of what's going to happen to our country.
This is why it needs to be managed at this point that we're talking now. That in terms of being put in place, this is what is going to happen. Look.
There was a press conference held by the Chief Administrative Secretary, Ministry of Health, a gentleman by the name of Dr. Rashid Aman.
Yes.
Many of the things he said, correct. This is how it is reported. If one could read or hear the speech, then one may have a different idea. But there's one quotation that I have found fault with. When it is reported that he said, it is only when one tests positive for the virus or presents the symptoms that they will be taken into isolation, either at Kenyatta National Hospital or Mbagathi.
Why do you find fault with that, though?
I find fault because you don't put people in quarantine because they've necessarily
This is not quarantine. He's talking about isolation.
But that's what quarantine is.
No. They're separating the cases here. When they talk about the quarantine, is when you're suspected. Yes, you're put in a specific area, which is
isolated.
Yes, isolated. And in the case of now getting treatment, that's when also you are in an isolated ward. So he's saying it's only when you have a confirmed case, or read again the quote.
It's only when one tests positive for the virus or presents the symptoms that they will be taken into isolation, either at Kenyatta National Hospital or Mbagathi. Let me continue. The 11 beds at KNH are enough for now, considering the situation.
So only when you present yourself with symptoms or when you're
Test
confirmed,
positive, yes.
That's when you put into that isolation.
Yes.
Why do you find fault with that? Do you want people to be taken into quarantine before they present symptoms?
If you have been in a place or geographical location where there is a likelihood of exposure, yes, indeed.
I get your point.
Yes.
Let's talk to an expert now. This is Dr. Moses Masika. He's a virologist. Dr. Good morning.
Good morning, sir.
How are you doing?
How are you?
Salama Kabisa. Welcome to the Situation Room. My name is Eric Latif. We have Ndu Oko and CT Muga. We've been talking about the coronavirus and the issue of Kenya's preparedness for this. Of course, the backlash that's coming out of the public today from a flight that arrived at JKIA yesterday, the day before yesterday, and the government response to this yesterday, and how now the public is all in panic. First of all, now address us. Are we prepared or are we not?
As it is, the government says we are prepared. I think there are few things we could do better, but banning flights is not one of them. I think the flight ban is driven by panic. It's, in my view, equivalent to the screaming and scaring locusts that we were seeing before to show people that you're working rather than actually doing the work. So I would say if we are to ban flights from China, we need to be cognizant of the fact that there are people who fly in from Southeast Asia. So are you saying we ban flights from entire Southeast Asia, from Europe because of Italy? So in my view, that is overreacting. We don't have enough cases to warrant banning of flights yet. If you were to look at the numbers coming in, maximum, say, 300 in a day, versus the risk of people infected in China, quick math tells me you need to do about 70 flights. That's 2.5 months to get one case.
Yep.
So it is a very low risk, which is not commensurate with the need to ban flights. Of course, there are countries that have banned flights, and my view is that they have more political reasons to do that, and we don't need necessarily a political reason to ban flights. We need to focus on what will work for our situation. And I think for me, I'm more worried about our healthcare workers ready. We have enough healthcare workers to respond if this virus starts in any county, say in somewhere far from Nairobi.
And do we have enough what supply? Would your answer to that be? Do we have enough in terms of capacity?
I mean, we may not have enough, but more worryingly is that the healthcare workers are not confident enough that they are tooled and equipped to handle this outcome. So it's actually now upon the government to train people across the country, make sure we have stocks of supplies that can be deployed to any part that needs them, and make sure that our healthcare workers are confident enough to respond if there is an outbreak in any part of the country. The other thing we need to worry about is the logistics of transferring samples, say from a hot place like Mandera, for instance, to Nairobi, because if you bring in, first of all, if you collect the sample wrongly, or you don't preserve it, or you don't protect it such that people are not exposed to it, you are risking a catastrophe. The test might come into Nairobi for testing, but it's already inappropriate for testing, so you get a false negative, which means the person is sick, but the test is showing otherwise.
Right.
So I think there are more effective approaches that we need to push the government to do. Banning flights is not yet one of them.
As a virologist, and just looking at the physiology of all of this, of course, there have been many calls and people are saying, okay, there's certain things that you can do, hygienic practices to stop this from happening.
Very true.
So what are some of those things? I mean, I think that's some positive information that we can put out there in terms of what then needs to be done.
That is very true, actually, and that's what we should focus on. What can we do that is effective? As a person, at an individual level, we need to observe simple things like if you have somebody who has a cold, you need to keep about 2 meters away or 6 feet away. You need to wash your hands. Probably this is the time to walk around with the hand sanitizer. Yes, so that if you touch surfaces that are usually in contact with many people, many times you are unconscious of it. You wash your hands, avoid touching your eyes, your mouth, and I mean, many of us do that unconsciously. So we need to keep our hands clean. If somebody has been exposed, either in the family or in the interactions in business or wherever, and they have a reasonable suspicion that they could be infected, not necessarily showing symptoms, but have a risk that they could be infected, which is not many right now, then they need to do what the government is calling self-isolation. And in virology, that would be, or in epidemiology, that would be where somebody minimizes interaction with others.
Right.
So you don't go into malls, you don't go into meetings, you don't go into open spaces with many people. Stay in your bedroom, do something that you can only do alone, and clean your hands frequently, use your own set of utensils. Basically isolate yourself because you're not sick, but you're suspecting that you could be exposed until you confirm that you're actually not sick.
We have,
of course, you can test.
Yeah,
but that's not happening currently for people who are just assuming or presumed to be exposed, but only those who are showing symptoms. Of infection. Yeah.
Debunk this mask wearing business that we have, because we have a lot of people in this country now going out looking for masks to wear. Does it actually help in any way, shape or form?
No, the mask will not help you if you are not sick. The mask will be useful.
Yeah.
Yes, that's true. I mean, first of all, there are two types. One is a surgical mask that is really just a mechanical barrier, doesn't filter out viruses. Then there's what we call an N95 respirator, which is the proper mask that would actually work in this situation, and that should be given to healthcare workers and people at the airport who need them. But if, for example, I start walking around with a mask in Nairobi, I'm not really helping. I'm not really helping anyone unless I am sick. If you are sick, you have say a flu, then it's okay to wear a mask. But if not, then it doesn't help you. And we've seen this as a culture in Southeast Asia where people, and even Japan, where people are used to wearing masks because of the outbreaks of flus in those areas. So it may be a bit of an issue in Kenya, because I've seen the other downside is that any time a Kenyan sees a person of Chinese extraction wearing a mask, we assume they are sick. And many of them are actually just being careful, which in my view doesn't really help, because when you have a mask, you also tend to touch it a lot, and in the process may actually increase the risk of transmission. So for now, if you are a Kenyan who is not sick, who has not been exposed, you don't need a mask. What you need is personal hygiene. Avoid the people who may be infected, of course, if there is one in your midst, which is not so many of them. And also do find out more about this virus. How is it transmitted? How can you, in case of a real outbreak, how should you respond?
We are talking to Dr. Moses Masika. He is a virologist, lectures on virology at the University of Nairobi, works at Center for Disease Control, specializing in viruses. Dr. There's a question that C.T. Muga keeps raising every time we discuss this
Before you ask that question, could I just make a correction?
Yes.
I work for the University of Nairobi. Kavi Institute of Clinical Research, not CDC.
Oh, not CDC.
Ah, right. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And not the ministry.
Not the government.
Yes. 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 Yes.
Now,
You can proceed.
The question that City keeps asking is, what is it that you virologists seem to be knowing about this virus that the rest of us are not being told? Because he's looking at the kind of panic, the widespread panic globally, the economic shutdown, the kind of measures that have been
Border
taken by
shutdown,
governments. And
Extreme measures, not
extreme
measures.
And we're looking at 80,000 cases out of 7 billion people.
That's very true. And there are two things that are worrying people. One is the social impact, and the other is the economic impact. Now, you can imagine if today, after the government has allowed the Chinese airlines to come in, actually one of the passengers turns out to have coronavirus. That would have a bigger social, political impact than it would an health impact. So, and there's people like India and US who have responded to China not just because of the health issues, but also because of political issues. So the bigger issue of social, political, economic causes making people respond in sometimes a panic mode, because the losses that are suffered, if for example today there are 2 cases or 3 cases in Nairobi, the economic impact is what scares people.
Yeah.
So that is true. That is true that we do worry about the social economic impact. But in terms of health, as a virologist, we know there are worse bugs that are existing, that are killing more people, that are more transmissible. And although coronavirus is a reason for worry and concern, we can prepare for it. And I don't think it's the worst that has hit the planet yet. We have, maybe that's why as virologists we seem to have more stilled mood towards the virus. But this doesn't mean that we shouldn't be prepared. And being prepared doesn't necessarily mean some of the things we are proposing. It's just looking for the most effective ways to make sure that if a case comes in, or first of all, we prevent cases from coming in, but also if a case comes in, we can handle it appropriately.
What should we do? Because we've had talks of isolation and quarantine, etc., etc.
Yes.
If you're looking at an ideal situation, someone lands in the airport, for example, and is presenting symptoms. From your point of view, what then should happen at that point?
The process should begin even before this person reaches the airport. So first of all, we need to restrict unnecessary movement. I think we have a way of issuing visas. Visas should be issued from certain places cautiously so that we don't give people visas who don't have any serious business doing the country if they are at risk of being infected. Secondly, we need to have a good screening method so that when these people are using what are they called, the thermal gunners, the temperature guns, we could have scanners that are more, you can look at more people at once and it's more effective. You don't need to come close to anyone unless they're actually febrile, and this will help give the healthcare workers even more confidence. And also the chance that, say, one plane has one person is low, so people may get complacent. So there is need for being vigilant all through, which means you have to work around the shifts and the trainings to make sure people are actually not getting complacent. And that means if somebody is coming in, we need to have the mechanism to detect them if they are positive, knowing very well that they could be not showing any symptoms, so the need for contact tracing. Now, contact tracing is where we have the persons who came in and they showed symptoms. We need to be able to track, not necessarily showing symptoms, but they got in the country and later became sick. We need to be able to track the people they interacted with in the plane and wherever else they've gone. This is where we are short as a country. It may need a little more investment. There are current methods now for doing tracking, which would mean things like apps that people would have to install, not by option, but by requirement. And the apps would be able to send you data and coerce them to enter data, either showing, are you febrile? Do you have a fever? Do you have a cough? Do you have a chest pain? And when you send the data, it can tell us where you are. So there is need, of course, to do that. Ideally, that's what I would do, and make sure that I can track whoever has come in from a high-risk area. And also, the self-isolation can be monitored by the state officials so that people in the Ministry of Health have a team that will call these people regularly to confirm that first they're not showing any symptoms and that they're actually taking the trouble to avoid public places. So the area of surveillance and contact tracing, I'm sure, can be improved with personnel and resources. And again, it needs to be commensurate with the risks. You don't want to keep harassing people who have no risk at all, because then it makes your life harder and their life harder. I'm sure there are many people of Chinese extraction that have probably much lower risk of getting infected than many of us, because either they've not been anywhere near the zones of infection, and they probably are not even Chinese citizens anymore, some of them. So we need to have that in mind, so that we don't stigmatize. As I've seen on social media, people have just grown into stigmatizing any person of Chinese extraction.
Absolutely.
And it has happened to us before when there was Ebola in West Africa.
Yes.
We shouldn't encourage it.
To happen.
Yeah, absolutely.
Dr. Moses Masika, thank you very much for joining us this morning, and thank you for, of course, shedding light on a lot of these things that we're discussing. We'll invite you in a couple of days to come and join us in the studio so we can discuss this much further.
Thank you, Latif. It's a pleasure to talk to you guys.
Thank you very much, Moses.
Shining the light.
Asante sana. Have a good day.
Asante.
Well, this is the situation room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. We've heard from a virologist at the University of Nairobi saying, yes, the issue of banning flights, not necessarily the way to go, but let's increase our vigilance, be more aware of what's happening. Maybe we can take just a few more phone calls after we take a look at traffic, just so we can allow people to vent. Because it appears that there's a need for the public to basically vent on this particular issue, especially seeing what has happened, arrival of a flight, and people being told you can self-quarantine. Well, so we're going to open up the phone line, 0719-012-600. That's 0719-012-600. What do you think of the measures that the government has taken or is taking to ensure that we are prepared for the coronavirus should it land in Kenya? Good morning. It's 9 o'clock.
All right, looking at what we'll see, remember that from Monday, there are certain parts of Enterprise Road that will be closed off, so expect some traffic there, and I'm just letting you know in advance of time. It being Friday, we do have pockets of traffic around the city. It's Friday, and it is the end of the month, so that's what we see for now. But nothing out of the ordinary today that we can say we did not expect, except for little pockets that we've told you about, which have until now been cleared off. So really, traffic is normal right now. You can be able to get where you're going, and at this point, we wish you good tidings of a Friday. Unless something pops up that we should know about, do let us know. Spice FM KE, but for now, things seem to be flowing quite smoothly.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latif, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes...
Masika saying that I should not be anywhere close to you guys until that moment when I stop exhibiting symptoms of a flu. So that's what's going to happen. So I'm leaving you not just now. I need to walk out so that you can, for your own safety and health.
Baba, you've been coughing into our eyes for the whole week.
If you have not gotten sick,
you want to
then
walk
is it
out
today?
now? No, it's our turn to cough into your eyes.
Not be today.
So, are we prepared to deal with the coronavirus? Do you think that we are? So, we've seen, of course, the government has come out and addressed this issue. The CAS for Health, who is a medical professional, came out yesterday, and of course, was giving out the issues, the steps that the government has taken, talking about isolation centers. We've got a quarantine ward with an 11-bed capacity at the Kenyatta National Hospital, saying people are going to be isolated when they exhibit symptoms. or when the case is confirmed that this person has coronavirus, the Kenyatta National Hospital is prepared to take care of such cases. But at the airport as well, we're seeing that there's screening that's happening. The doctor is telling us many of the medical workers are not feeling confident that they are able to handle this thing. Because they have not been, given enough tools to deal with this.
Right,
Things like the N95 mask.
If those measures are if those measures are to be put in place, and I think at the very least those, and we have it here from a professional telling us that, we actually could do better. You could make it at a point whereby it could be foolproof and leak-proof in the sense that, and it's not just for the people who are expending these duties at the same time, the health workers, not feeling confident they're not enough in terms of capacity to be able to handle this. And then I think a lot of this seems to be centered on Nairobi only, across the country, should something happen. And I think it's clear now that, the country is not ready. But a lot more needs to be done, at least to keep us at that place where, we're ready, at the very least.
Given just how poorly government ministries communicate, there's an off chance they could really very well be ready. Why do I say this? We have the Kenya Medical Research Institute. They also have virologists. In fact, they have an entire, not even department center that deals with just this. We have CAVI. We have other research centers at Moi University. We have medical doctors, meaning it isn't that we may lack the expertise. And if you're talking about capacity, according to the interview that I mentioned earlier on, there's also mention of a 120-bed space at Mbagathi.
Yeah.
The problem being it hasn't been sufficiently equipped. So it may well be that we are ready, but the communication is in halts and spits and spats, because someone says this, then something comes, someone says this. You haven't heard someone coming up and saying, this is how we have prepared. Let's give you details.
Absolutely. And
when we talk about Kenyatta, when we say 10 or 20, this is what we mean.
Yeah.
When we say 120, this is what we mean. When we say Eldoret, this is what, so that people say, aha, so that's what you have. Now,
even show us. Just take the media there. Take the cameras there.
Let them see it.
And
this is it.
It costs nothing to do that, because I keep saying
it costs.
Look, compared to what you have to deal with when people don't have the information, it costs nothing.
It's nothing.
Compared to, really, in the absence of information, you rise to people being able to say, then, whatever they want. And that's the fear that you have, that people then can say whatever they want. People can, because you've not given them information otherwise. So people will speculate, and somebody's speculation is another man's truth. And that's what you have.
And it spreads.
And it spreads like wildfire.
It spreads like that.
The one person who seems to be under fire as a result of all this, at least a lot of spotlights has been turned on, now is our Minister for Foreign Affairs.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. I wonder, the spotlight should actually be distributed democratically. Yes, there's a foreign affairs aspect of it. Indeed. There is the transport aspect of it.
There's the interior, of course.
Yes, and there's the health. And all these things, all these individuals take equal blame.
It's true.
They take equal blame.
So we continue, of course, monitoring what the government is doing, and we'll be updating you on what the government is doing. Also, if you come across any case that we ought to know about, of course, you can let us know at SpiceFMKE on Twitter, at SpiceFMKE on Facebook and Instagram. This is a Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation. And then, of course, you can also call in at 0719-012-600. Shifting gears a little bit, a story appeared in the Standard earlier this week that was talking about the cases that we have in Nairobi, okay? And this is regarding our public spaces. And the story was saying, looking at the kind of public spaces that we have in Nairobi tells us about the people that we are in Kenya. This is what lack of public spaces tells us about Nairobi and its peoples. How many public spaces do we have in the country? Oh, just talking about Nairobi alone. And are they sufficient, and how evenly distributed are they, and what is the method of managing them? That's what I want to raise this morning. And just from the onset, I'd like to say that I'd like the private sector to take over rehabilitation and management of Nairobi parks. This is taking over from the county government, which is also unable to take over a lot of its work. So can the county government hand over the management of Nairobi parks to private sector so the private sector can rehabilitate and manage them going forward. I'll give you now the justification for that. Looking at the number of parks that we have, City Park in Nairobi, it's about 60 hectares. This is the one in Parklands. Uhuru Park, everybody knows where Uhuru Park is, 12.9 hectares. Uhuru Gardens on Langata Road. We have Jivaji Gardens in Nairobi CBD. We've got the Aga Khan Walk. This is just, an empty space that is for public use, recreation. We've got Karura Forest, 1,000 hectares. Nairobi Arboretum, which is very many hectares as well. We've got Ngong Forest surrounding Nairobi, Ololua Forest in Ngong, the Nairobi National Park itself, the Kasarani Sports Complex. If you look at it, we've got a lot of empty space that also is designated and earmarked for public use. We've got the August 7th Memorial along Haile Selassie Avenue in Nairobi. All these are for use by the public. Now, according to the census of 2019, the area of Nairobi that has the most population is Embakasi with 988,000 people. 808. These people are concentrated around Mukuru, Pipeline, Tasia, Imara Daima. So Embakasi has the highest number of people. What public space do you have accessible or available to the people of Embakasi? Zero. Let's go to the second most densely populated, Kasarani. Kasarani has 780,000 people. These are people who are concentrated around Kasarani, Githurai, and the environs. Those ones you could say that the closest that they have is, the Moi International Sports Complex, Kasarani. We could also look at them having access to City Park or having to go all the way to Uhuru Park. People around Kibera, people around other parts of Eastlands only have access to a park called Uhuru Park, or you have to walk long distances to have these ones, have access to them. How are they well managed? Are they not well managed? No, they are not well managed. They are actually poorly managed. You don't have a park, you don't have benches in these parks, you don't have walkways in these parks, you don't have places where people can just go and lie down. Not much is offered in terms of the recreational facilities. And that's why I'm saying, if you gave this to the private sector, it may be better managed. Case in point, the Arboretum and the Karura Forest are actually managed by a group of well-wishers who work closely and hand in hand with the Kenya Forest Service. The Friends of the Nairobi Arboretum work hand in hand with the Kenya Forest Service to manage the Nairobi Arboretum. Same thing happens with the Karura Forest, the Friends of Karura Forest, who are working very much at, ensuring that Karura Forest is well managed, it's well run and all. And if you look at those two, compare them to these other parks that we're talking about, you can see glaring differences. The Aga Khan Trust signed a deal with the government in 2012 to manage City Park. They were supposed to spend 1 billion shillings to go and rehabilitate City Park, to ensure that it has, walkways, it has cycling areas, it has, let's look at managing the Joseph Murumbi mausoleum, looking at also managing the Pio Gamapinto mausoleum for historical purposes, and ensuring that it's well run. Since then, issues with the county government of Nairobi have ensured that the Aga Khan have not spent their money on rehabilitating a park for the benefit of the people of Nairobi. And that's what I'm saying. Nairobi cannot manage the parks. They shouldn't be allowed to.
They shouldn't be allowed to, for the fact that there's quite a lot that they need to be handling, and so recreation doesn't then fall into the mandates. Of course, it does fall into the mandate, but it should not, by virtue of the fact that there's so many other things that they need to be handling. Of course, we can't take away the immense value that recreation has on the people of a country or a city, whereby they have an opportunity to just sit, relax, rest. It plays a major part in all of this. However, apart from that, you need to look at also the value that could come in from having something like this handled privately. Having been handled publicly for the longest time, you've seen that you've not been able to derive much value in terms of what else could be gotten out of it. Of course, there are many things that private entities then would be able to do if they took over the management and control of such, because then many activities could come into play. I mean, I look at other countries whereby the parks are famous for what they're able to do. New York and Central Park, for example, that's world renowned. You know about that. You know about the beautiful Japanese blossom parks in Tokyo. You hear about interestingly enough, People's Park in Abuja that is used for events that people coming from around the globe to then come and enjoy.
Just come and enjoy the People's Park in Abuja.
I mean, it's used for it's used for very, very many events, and it's being handled by a private entity. They see that this is a space that we could use, that people can come, sit and enjoy, but at the same time, we can actually, bring in some revenue from this. So apart from being a recreational thing, a recreational avenue, it's also an added advantage where a city can make money. We had this conversation before. We talk about one of the primary ways that a city makes money across the world is the collection of taxes and the collection of duty that you get from licenses and of businesses and things like that. But here for me is a gold mine that cities could actually benefit from in terms of added revenue to the kitty. Now, having a private entity coming in and running it doesn't mean that all the money goes to them. Revenue share could come in whereby, we manage this thing, we handle it. A certain amount is apportioned to the city, for example, but it's added income. And then you make sure that, you raise the profile of cities, you beautify the city, you create, you have recreation for the residents of the city, which you would find that you would probably be able to, if you were to do an audit later on of the citizens of your or the residents of your city, you find that they actually would be doing better, because they have somewhere to go and basically offload. And we can't, it's something that has been ignored, but I think too important not to be considered.
Why I'm silent is I'm thinking. I once visited the city of Haifa in Israel, and they have a garden there. It's an undulating land. One of the most beautiful gardens I've actually ever seen. I mean, just looking at it, forget even walking into it, just looking at it, the plants, the flowers, the arrangement, the symphony that it all creates. Ideally, in an ideal situation, a county government such as this one, or the government, or the city council when we had them, would have had a department, maybe environment or other, that supposedly deals with this. But remember, we come from a backdrop or a background where public land was fair game. It was the land that people who are the high and mighty, the people in power, could actually annex and hive off for their own personal and private uses. If people could think of hiving off Uhuru Park, why am I saying this? You talked about Embakasi not having open spaces. I'm sure they do. Remember, for the longest time, any land, whether it was school, whether it belonged to an institution, whether it belonged to the prisons or the army, it was just government land.
Government, it was public.
There was no individual titles for this land. So it wasn't difficult for someone to annex it. Town planners cannot plan for the habitation of individuals of that magnitude and not plan for public space. It simply cannot happen. It doesn't happen. They plan for it. It just means that the public space that was available in that area was gobbled up.
It's possible also that where some of these slums actually sit was initially earmarked for public land.
Thank you.
So now, once, of course, people have come and they started living in these areas, then what happens to the need for public land? And when the city government or the government completely lifts up its hands and says, okay, no, people need to live, but we turn a blind eye to the fact and the need that they need public recreational spaces, then this is pointing out to a problem.
That's the excuse a government would use when they haven't taken the issue of providing habitation for its people seriously. So they more or less allow you to take the issue of habitation in your own hands, because slums are they're not government initiatives.
No.
Okay? The individual initiatives. That's why there's no order, there's no standardization. Now, when you cop out of a responsibility of that, we then have the discussion we're having now, and we have this real nightmare staring at you. Because the moment you have a situation where people have occupied government land and you want to get rid of them, you then create a new problem. We've had problems with the Mao.
Yeah.
And these aren't people who left their places to illegally go and occupy. No. If you look at the history of many of those people,
they spent money, they bought pieces of land.
Yes, they did.
Right.
Yes, they did. But yet, if you look at the management of it, it's as though they are squatters. And initially, many of them they were precisely not that. You also hear of cases of large farms that have been invaded, that's the word they use, by squatters. Now, our law is actually fairly clear about that. There's a way in which you settle such matters. But if you're talking about open spaces in this within, say, any major city or any place with a human dwelling, Those dwellings exist because they've been planned for. And when they are planned for, open spaces are always planned for. In the same way that they plan for schools, they plan for hospitals, and they plan for all other amenities, open spaces are planned for.
17 minutes after 9 o'clock, let's take a look at the weather and then the conversation continues.
It could be this one. Or maybe this one. Maybe even this one. More of the timeless and greatest hits you love. Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise. Yeah!
You're listening to Spice FM.
The sun's up in Nairobi at 20 degrees, expecting highs of 27 and lows of 10 and partly cloudy conditions to prevail through the day. In Mombasa at 30 degrees, it's going to be a sunny and bright morning, but we expect showers in the afternoon then with highs of 33 and lows of 26. It's mostly sunny in Nyeri at 20 degrees, looking at showers later on in the day with highs of 25 and lows of 14. In Kisumu at 23 degrees, highs of 28 right now, or rather later in the day with thunderstorms expected. In Malindi at 30 degrees, rain expected later on with highs of 32. It's 20 degrees and sunny conditions in Nakuru, partly cloudy conditions to follow later on with highs of 28 and lows of 14. In Eldoret at 18 degrees, it's mostly cloudy, expect rain later with highs of 26 and lows of 13. Take a quick look at East Africa with Dar es Salaam at 30 degrees, mostly sunny today with highs of 33. Kampala at 22 degrees, it's cloudy, thunderstorms expected later with highs of 26 and lows of 21. And finally, taking a look at Lagos at 27 degrees, it's sunny right now with highs of 36 and 27, the low, and expect thunderstorms later in the day.
Breathing life into the 90s.
Everybody, what's up?
94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself.
Happy Friday, 20 minutes past 9 o'clock.
Mornings done right. 94.
CT Muga Nduoko. We're closing the week on a social issue here, and this is on public spaces and provision of public recreational spaces for the residents of Nairobi. You've got about 5 million people who live in Nairobi on a daily basis. Now, the Aga Khan Trust for Culture had signed a deal with the government in 2012 to spend 1.7 billion shillings to rehabilitate City Park in Parklands and create, a better environment for people to go and enjoy and use the 60 hectares of that park. That park actually initially used to be 90 hectares. 30 went to grabbers. So let's just deal with the 60, all right? This is where this Kenya's second Vice President Joseph Murumbi and his wife are buried. This is where Pio Gamapinto is buried. So also it has some element of culture and preservation of our history. Now, what I'm raising this morning is saying that the City Council and City County Government of Nairobi have been unable to basically manage and plan well for our open spaces. And I'm saying that we should create a framework in which the private sector is able to contribute towards this rehabilitation and management of spaces. Now, I'm not saying for any one bit that we should have a tendering process and a company bids and gets the award to run Uhuru Park. No, I'm saying we create a way in which the public is allowed to participate in this. Looking at a case in point, how Karura Forest is managed very well through the collaboration of the Friends of Karura Forest. Right. And they work very well with the Kenya Forest Service on managing that. So create the same kind of a community framework that allows Friends of Uhuru Park to mobilize funds, to mobilize the corporate sector, CSR arms, to put in money so that we can manage and rehabilitate the park and ensure that the number of people who go to Uhuru Park every Sunday actually get there and find a proper park that they can be proud of, that they feel that they can be proud of. Other parks in Nairobi, Uhuru Park, we're talking about City Park, we're talking about the Uhuru Gardens on Langata Road, and then going into the other estates in Eastlands. What public land do we have? Can we create provision for public spaces in this locality? Let me give you an example of the City of London. So they've got this plan, right? And the plan, chapter 7 of the plan for London, talks about how they can manage their public spaces. Now, the plan is called the Current London Plan, and the chapter 7 is London's living spaces and places. And it looks at every ward and the proximity of every resident of that ward to a park. And they have even said that regional parks, which are, parks that are large enough, 400 hectares and above, every person in London should have at least an 8-kilometer access to a large park like Regional Park. A metropolitan park, 3.2 kilometers maximum walking distance from your home to a metropolitan park. A district park, 1.2 kilometers from your home to a district park. Local, small and pocket parks, 400 meters maximum. This is 2 hectares and below. They're saying that every person living in London should have access to a public space within walking distance.
Why? Do you know the thing is because they have realized the importance of recreation amongst people.
Yes.
Realize the importance of it's not just got to be 8 hours knocking on that wood all the time. You need a time where your brain then is allowed to
unwind.
Exactly. Now, to say that, because we've even leveled the parks in London, for example, district, metropolitan, what did you call the other one? Regional.
The others are local, small and pocket.
And pocket parks, even, to realize that, you know what? Across board, it's necessary to have something like this. I don't think that we on this other side of the pond, as it were, have taken that into consideration to the depths at which they have.
Actually, we have.
To the level that they have.
Actually, we have. No. There's a kink. I'm going to explain why. It is what bedevils us, and is we always bring this out. At the level where we are planning, believe me, we are right there. Because principles of planning, many of the people who we claim to be some of our foremost planners, where do you think they got their training from after the University of Nairobi? Many of them got government scholarships and studies in those very places where we are, the ones we're referring to.
Yeah.
So if you're talking about the principles that are required in doing these things, or do they know it and do they have beautiful plans for it? They do. That's why, for instance, when you look at a road, you have what you call a road reserve.
Yes.
It's a planning aspect. If you're talking about railway, there's what they call a way leave. All these things are planning. Whether it is zoning, whether it is a green belt, whether you're looking for something recreational, there are basic principles that any planner has, and every town, every county have planners.
Okay, it can be planned. It can be planned until you're blue in the face, but if you don't implement it, it means nothing. Unfortunately,
no, I was actually responding to what you had said.
You can have the plan in place, but then
yes, you know when you say when you make a wholesome statement.
I said that the recreation of people not taken into consideration to the levels at which we are making these other references to. That is what I said.
Ensuring that it's done.
Yes, so ensuring that it is done. That's what I said. The plan may be there, but if you don't implement it, it's just a plan.
The city fathers just look at it as plan.
It's a plan. It can be gathering dust there. It's a plan.
Title deeds.
Yeah.
Former councillors in this city who have spoken on record, and this is the governor of Kiambu, Waitito. He's talked about when there were councillors here and how they were grabbing open spaces and saying, go and ask so and so.
They know.
That whole market there, we took it. And he's proud of saying something like that.
Why don't I give you an example of, say, just the city? If you look about the Woodley Estate.
Yes.
There's a place called Sona, all right, where you have all these, the market and what have you.
Yeah.
That was an open space. It was subdivided into so many small little pieces of land, owned and co-owned and later owned by so many people. Now, from what I understand, at some point all those title deeds will be revoked. Because this, again, was public land. On this same public land, yes, you'll find even a permanent church has been erected. So when you talk about open spaces, why you see me bringing planning so strongly, it's for a simple reason. All these places where people live in were planned for. And with that planning, certain basic things are also planned for and taken into consideration. Now, I am pushing the agenda because it's not as though we don't know what those areas are meant for. We do. It's not as though just because somebody has put up a building, we don't know what it was meant for. We do. Yes.
It's there on paper somewhere.
Yes. So what you do is, remember, there was a time when the former Prime Minister was Minister for, was it roads and transport?
Roads, yes.
Yeah, roads.
And
one
it was roads and public
works. Yes. One of the things he undertook was to ensure that any edifice, any structure that was in a road reserve came down.
Yep.
There was a hue and cry, but they came down. It means it was known all along that these were road reserves. Okay? Excuse me.
Paul, that's not me.
It's not you, it's just me talking too much. Then came the issue. Keep crossing your fingers. In fact, if I were you, I would take a finger.
I would go and
and
quarantine.
I would take a finger and place it on my forehead. It works better. It works just crossing the fingers, yes.
You're making a point on reserves.
I'm making a
the
point
plans.
and saying that we have seen things done and we've seen the positive outcome. So this is not an impossible task. Neither is it a pipe dream. It's something that can be realized because not only, remember the activity about riparian land. There, we somehow went a little overboard.
Right, by knocking down all these
No,
structures.
yeah, we went a little
right?
overboard.
Yeah.
I'll tell you why we went a little overboard. If you go to the west, you'll find many cities which are built literally on the banks of a river. Literally. Meaning, if you take a step outside that building, you're in the river. Yes, exactly. So, I'm digressing. What you say is true. These plans that were made never really vanished. That is the truth of the matter. So, again, we are back to that discussion of, is there a will? And Eric, you know, for once, the idea of palming this off to a private entity that would have an interest, well, I think I'm in agreement because I was the same person who also brought up the issue of Nairobi National Park, and I said, you know something? Relocate these animals. Yes, relocate them. As a park, I'm not certain of its economic viability, but I'm very certain of the economic viability of the land it sits on. And I'm also certain of what that can do to change not just the face of Nairobi, but the economic value of Nairobi. That is not land where a park should be sitting on. Not really. If you really must insist on having animals nearby, create a zoo.
That's another conversation altogether. Management of our public spaces and our public parks is what we're discussing this morning, focusing on Nairobi. Of course, not just Nairobi. We also have to remember that there are other parts, there are other, cities and urban places around the country. Of course, going to Mombasa, Nakuru, Eldoret, and the others. But let's first of all start with Nairobi. How best should we manage the public places in Nairobi? Are we managing them well? Also, what's the point of the process of recovering what should have belonged to the public in the first place? Looking at those highly densely populated areas that ought to have some recreational facilities that don't have. What's the situation with that? It's 9:30. Let's take a look at traffic, and then the conversation continues.
All right, folks, it looks like we're in very good standing because as concerns traffic, I can't see it. It seems that it's looking a lot better now. Everybody essentially has gotten where they're going, at least for this part of the morning. We're likely to see that traffic levels are going to rise as the day goes by. It was still a bit hectic on Mombasa Road at some part. Police are at every point. So let's see what happens. But apart from that, coming in from Langata Road and then coming in from Westlands as well, not so bad. And of course, the situation on Thika Road has eased off. So So folks have either gotten where they're going or haven't left the house yet. But for now, it all looks very, very good.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise. Yeah.
You're listening to Spice FM. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself.
Very good. Kenya, we spearheaded the coming to birth of the Sustainable Development Goals. Sustainable Development Goal number 11, Sustainable Cities and Communities. It says, by 2030, you shall provide universal access to safe, inclusive, and accessible green and public spaces, especially for women, children, older persons, and persons living with disabilities. That is SDG number 11.
Signed to was,
yes,
of course,
ratified
by Kenya, of course, by nature of being a member of the United Nations.
Yes.
Of course, when you look at things like that, then you say you actually appended your signature to this thing, which means that you were committed. And yes, had an understanding, a full, not just an understanding, comprehension of then what was supposed to happen, you know, from level to the next, right?
Okay, what did we stand to gain by signing this thing?
Well,
committing ourselves, and then of course we get support.
Yes, no.
There's money. There's money that comes in. UN Habitat is also housed here, and UN Habitat, of course, has been pushing for sustainable cities and those kind of things. Every year there is the World Habitat Day. About 2 years ago, the theme for World Habitat Day was public open spaces becoming the backbone of growing cities, right? So, and we participated in those conversations and talked about our public open spaces. So these are things that we've done in terms of policy. We participate in this. We talk about them. We say that, yes, we have Uhuru Park. If you went to City Park this morning, you'd not be able to do much because there's nothing much to do.
No, there's nothing. Now there's grass and there's...
You go to Uhuru Gardens, the most you can do is you find people who go and park their vehicles there and they're chewing mirror, and then that's it. And, on Sundays, people who will come and walk around.
There's an odd event every now and then. Yeah.
Odd event here and there. But in terms of even the basics, pavements and such, providing seating spaces. A couple of years ago, Nairobi City started that project of allowing the private sector to come and put up, bins and benches. Remember? The benches that were put up, especially along Mamangina Walk and such, and Mamangina Street. So, if you look at those kind of things and how they were then not managed, not well taken care of, it was just on paper. And this is where I think we completely lose it.
Well, I think, again, I don't think we have an appreciation for that necessity for human beings. At the end of the day, it's really the paper chase. And after that, making sure that you can get as much as you can for yourself as an individual. It may be on paper, it may have been planned, but from the very heart of the matter, the inherent appreciation that human beings need an opportunity to then be able to relax and de-stress and all of that does not come into play. Because if it did, then you would find, I think, there would be more clamor. So that's why I do agree that, yes, it should be handed over to the private sector, even if it is just for the commercial value alone, before we even go into an appreciation or understanding that people need an opportunity to take things easy. For the commercial value alone, something that they can now take, manage, and bring in some extra revenue. For that alone, I do think that it should be handed over.
It would make a lot more sense if and when we have a permanent, not residency, but a permanent citizenship of people in urban areas, meaning there is no rural area to go to.
This is your home.
This is it. Okay? This is your neighborhood. This is it. We have a situation where we have alternatives for greenery.
Nairobi is not home.
No, it's not. We just live and work here.
In fact, we don't have that connection.
We have a connection insofar as the place... The language...
It's meeting a need.
Yes.
I see what you mean, because if you talk about New York and Central Park, people who are in New York essentially are New Yorkers.
Yeah.
That's where they are from.
That's it.
That is their home.
That's it.
So if they need a place to relax, they're actually essentially at home. They're taken care of.
If I'm tired, I go home.
Yeah.
And it's not where I live. I go to... When I feel I need to take a break, I go home.
But then there's a minority who actually only consider Nairobi as home.
Yes.
For instance, let's talk to Lydia. Lydia, good morning.
Good morning, Spice FM. Thank you for your good program. I always enjoy it. Our lights have just gone off, so
Pole.
you are out of the radio just now.
Pole sana.
I'm glad I can get you through the phone. What I wanted to say is the parks are very important, 100% important. I argued when Professor Wangari Maathai was fighting to save the Uhuru Park. I praised her. She saved the Uhuru Park for the poor to go there to lie down and eat AIR burgers.
Yeah.
It really helps everyone to relax.
Yeah.
And our traffic jam produces a lot of poisonous
fumes,
carbon dioxide, which kill us if we don't get oxygen from the parks. The parks are almost like forests to give us green oxygen. Our blood cells use the oxygen from our lungs to produce electricity to pump our heart. So look at the importance what Wangari Maathai protected to save.
Lydia,
And
Lydia, what do you say about now letting the parks be run and managed by the private sector?
It's better. It's better. Now, see, the bus stops were provided, metal bus stops, metal bins, barriers. Those drug addicts come and just cut it all off, and a big truck comes and collects it.
Yeah.
Why? Drug addicts take all the metal away. Thank you. So the parks are very important to keep us alive. That oxygen is what we need.
Is important. Thank you very much, Lydia, and have a good day in Parklands. Hope the power comes back. Kenya Power has gone into losses. They need to bring the power
becoming
back
a
so you
habit.
can pay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good day, Lydia. 0719-012-600. That's 0719-012-600. The conversation we're having is around the management of public parks in Nairobi. Alan calling in from Nairobi. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I just wanted to make a small contribution.
Yes,
go ahead.
Alan.
You know, once upon a time,
Yes.
the city of Nairobi had such an extensive lungs. I mean lungs as the ones of the body. Those lungs started from the Nairobi University football field. Those fields, they were interrupted by YMCA, UKC, and St. Paul's Church.
Okay.
And then those lungs stretched to Uhuru Park.
Yep.
You went to the Railway Golf Club.
Yep.
You went to the cemetery, and you ended up at the Nyayo Stadium.
Yes.
So planners came and interrupted them. I don't know why Serena sits there in our lungs. And then there's another church brick building at the corner there in Uhuru Park.
Yep.
It should not have been there. So I like these things called clubs. Nairobi Club may be a small thing for few people, but look at the greens they have given us. If you go to Ngong Road, the only guys giving us lands are Harlequins and Impala Club. Look at the golf clubs. We thank God that they exist because they give us greens.
Yeah.
That's basically what I wanted to say, old chap.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Well, old chap, thank you.
Have a good one, Alan.
Cheers.
0719-012-600. Well, yeah, looking back at the kind of public places that we had before and what we're having now and how it's being managed.
You know, Serena has been there for so long, people forget that it's smack.
Inside.
In the middle of Uhuru Park.
Smack. And the question one would ask, it's not that such buildings are not usually permitted. What is the additional value it gives to the park?
Yeah. Exactly.
Okay, now, if, for instance, the Aga Khan chain, who are the owners of this, said that we are going to be maintaining this park, and this is the plans we have for the next 20 years, because clearly this hotel makes us money. So part of our profit and some of the CRS that we want to be involved in would be this. I haven't heard of it. It may be there, but I haven't heard of it. Eric, have you heard of it?
I haven't heard, especially when it comes to Serena and the Uhuru Park.
Yes, you can't be smack in the middle of a public utility and you don't benefit directly. If you look, say for instance, if you come to the Lavington area and you look at the Jaffrey Sports Field where people walk in, that was a public space, in case you didn't know. But The public good is anybody can go to Jeffrey and take a nice walk.
Absolutely.
And they've put cabro in it.
The
they've put
community actually
benches.
manages that.
Yes,
very
and
well.
it's
Benches
open
in.
to the public.
Yes.
So nobody gives a hoot whether it's called who. It's open to the public, and it is safe, and it is pleasant, and it's well maintained.
And it has some commercial aspects in terms of the gym there and the others, which help to
Yes.
generate revenue.
Yes.
Which helps to manage
Yes.
that public
Yes.
facility.
You see, a lot of the land that was taken, Eric, and you're right in mentioning Embakasi. If you were to look at, say, the public space, let me talk about public and halls, utility halls that existed.
Social halls. Oh
They
my
existed
God.
everywhere.
Oh, yes.
Everywhere. In every estate that you can think of, there was a social hall.
Yeah.
Now, next to the social hall, there was
a
usually...
field.
Thank you, Eric. You've got it.
There's a field for sports. I
Yes,
think
there
in some
was.
areas of like
Yes, there
Bahati, for
was.
example, you still have like the YMCAs that
Yep.
were then able to come in, and basketball, other sports then could be played as a result of that. I think to the point now that we have rundown facilities, and there has been outcry. I mean, I know for sure that right now some private, or corporate organizations are being looked to kind of bring them back to life, because clearly, in terms of hope or salvation, they're the only ones at this point, because the
need them.
public, absolutely, you need them to do it. And I'm saying, I at this point, perhaps they then need to be called upon to do this, because of the realization that at that point when they're established,
so there's an
they
incentive.
were important.
Because you see, as a private organization, when it comes into, let's say, Mudhuru, and I know there's the Mudhuru Social Hall. So if we come and rehabilitate Mudhuru
What's in
Social
it
Hall,
for me?
what's in it for us? There has to be some sort of incentive so that you can work with the community, and then you add value to the community, and there's something else that the community gets, and the person who's investing their money in this, they get something out of it. It has to be a give and take.
It has
and
to
there's those social halls actually still are there. The structures
They
are there.
exist.
Mudhuru is there. I've been to Pumwani is there. The one you're talking about, very many parts of Eastlands, you'll find those social halls. The fields have gone.
No, those ones went.
But the social hall
those
is
were
there.
taken.
The old dispensary, the dispensary and a bit of land around it is still there. But plenty.
When they were planning for these things, you'd plan for a marketplace also.
Yeah.
Okay. In addition to the social hall, you'd also
A bit of a shopping center.
you would plan. Yes, all
There's a
these things were
nursery.
primary school. Depending on, let's say, if you look at a big development like say Buruburu, you had to have not just a shopping area, school, open utility, secondary school. In all honesty, that's why I said you have to go back to planning and understand that the basics are understood by the planners and they must be there. To undertake such a project, part of the process that you must follow that guarantees that it will be passed, you must show how you've catered for all these things. Because the welfare of the people who are going to live there goes beyond just having a place to live in. And this is understood.
No, that was then. I'm not sure that now when the city fathers are giving planning permits or building permits for areas like the newly developing areas, Ruai and such.
I am in full agreement. Why do you think these buildings keep collapsing? Huh? I mean,
Kajiado County and Kitengela. So Kitengela is now a proper urban center. Is there a plan for such social amenities?
Look, you're talking about Kitengela, whereby there's no sewerage.
Rongai,
First
Ngong.
of all, let's talk about an active sewage system before you now start talking about recreation for individuals.
Recreation is a luxury.
No, it's a luxury at this point, my friends. The residents just recently raised 40 million shillings, and right now the county council is giving them problems in terms of how that 40 million shillings, which they raised, is going to be used to set up a sewage system, which is going to benefit the entire county.
Yep.
So before we start looking at that, and I start asking questions about public land that has been kept aside for people to come and sit down and chill, it's not going
I'm
to.
joking.
No, yeah.
Your suggestion, Eric, is not just timely, but it is spot on. Because remember, there's this concept of public-private participation, PPP.
Yeah.
It underpins that very, very idea in this sense. It is understood that there are things the government can do, but the things the government actually can't do because it isn't its core mandate. And much as they may try, what they will do is they'll be met with failure. Simply because whether it's the attitude, whether it's the way in which we look at these things, but it were a lot better if the government partnered with private enterprise, people who know commercial value and who will also understand that the benefit that the citizenry derive from it will also help them achieve their commercial goals.
Indeed. At 13 minutes to 10 o'clock, this is the Situation Room with Kenya's biggest conversation. Taking a short break. The phone lines are still open, 0719 012 600. What's the best way to manage Nairobi's public places?
Pure golden sound and good talk. 94.4 Spice FM. Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise. Yeah!
You're listening to Spice FM. Stream your favorite show on Spice FM, live online.
8-12-10.
Breathing life into the 90s.
012-600. That's 0719-012-600. Before we took
94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
Resident and permanent residency in Nairobi. And people taking pride in the fact that this is Nairobi is my home, it's my city, and this is what I ought to do. An example, in London, there's a campaign that's being spearheaded by some Londoners, Green London National Park City campaign. So they're people who are saying, look, this city is doing so well in terms of having its greenery. Let's actually convert it and call it a national park city. Because they're looking at what they have in with them. 8 million trees, 13,000 living species, 3,000 parks, 30,000 allotments for open spaces, 2 national nature reserves, 47% of London is green space, 60% of London is classified as open space. So because of this reason, we are so proud. Let's campaign
now,
for this
but
to
their,
happen.
their problem is not food. Or their problem at this point, as you can see, is there is a level of actualization where their issue is not food or shelter or adequate transport every day. That's not their problem right now. So they could do things like this.
No, but that's it. Paused.
Peter. Good morning, Peter. Peter.
Now,
yes,
I can hear you.
Good. Go ahead.
Yeah, I want to contribute. I'm saying this.
Yes.
These public facilities, for me, the best way of managing them is just private them. You remember right now, everything in these areas is so dangerous. Some of these areas are very dangerous right now, like Uhuru Park.
Yeah.
That's not a place you can pass sometimes. The other day in this park, a lady was shot dead. So most of these parks are becoming so dangerous. So I think the best way of managing them is having some arrangement where we have some private people coming in to assist the government run them. I think that will help us. Some of the areas are they're so dirty you can't even sit there.
Yeah.
And then another thing maybe we need to recover all the public utility areas that were lost. The same money we put in recovering, repair and run. Yes, we put the same energy, recover these areas. Because if you're saying now in Kinangela we don't even have a facility, then let's recover those ones that we had.
Yeah.
I'm sure if the government put the same energy it put on repair and land recovery, we can recover these areas. So for me, the best way is just privatizing these areas.
Thank you very much, Peter.
Yes, thank you.
One of the reasons why your suggestion actually makes a lot of sense, Eric, it will reduce the sort of projects or the wastage that goes into projects that are primarily, should we say, overseen by the government. Let me give you perhaps an example of something real. Mamangina Drive, as we called it before, all right? The length of that is 2 kilometers, okay? Mamangina Drive. At the point in time before renovation, you had parking for 800 vehicles, no public toilets. There were none at that point in time. The cost of this refurbishment was 460 million Kenyan shillings. After that, of course, the length of the park remained the same, still 2 kilometers. The parking was reduced to 300 vehicles, but now there were 20 new public toilets. A plus, small problem, no water.
What's the distance to the
just
ocean?
a small problem.
It's just literally next
it's
door.
Just next
it's Asla and then that
hop
TV.
and a skip away.
And then it had an amphitheater that could take 300 people. Okay? Now, clearly, some thought went into it. But if you look at the need it was supposed to serve, if you think of 20 toilets that people are using with no water, I don't need to paint the picture anymore.
No.
So you actually get to feel, maybe there's a problem with the design. Maybe this contractor, the maybes are many.
Yeah.
Now, have you had been mentioned whether grass was planted? No. All I'm saying was, if you look at Bamangina Drive...
And 400 million shillings.
Yeah, 460, Baba. That's closer to 500.
460 million shillings.
If you look at the view it has of the sea,
the Momangina
Man, you
waterfront.
cannot get anything
can't get a
more
better view.
beautiful than that.
Yeah.
Now, private-public partnership, where this would work is because those who have a profit element in their mind would make sure this thing works.
And you know what? That's Mombasa, right? Now, you talk about public spaces. And look, when we give examples, it's not as if it can't work. If you look at the Cape Town water, the VW waterfront, Cape Town, this is a port, public space.
Yeah.
Right? This is a port, ships, dock, offload,
And a security area as well.
Secured. In that same area, and we can't be talking about an area that is more than 4 kilometers, right? What have they been able to do? They've brought in private enterprise. And so you have an entire mall that sits in that area. You have one version or one branch of the Cape Town Aquarium in another area. And then you have an amphitheater again where people can come. They pay. People are ready to pay whatever little they have for some kind of entertainment. Public land, a port where commercial activity for the nation takes place, but still a space where it has been seen, we can do something with this. And then you invite the private.
You even have a floating restaurant.
I mean, it can be done. We're not talking about something that is far off. Where's that planet you said that we should be talking about? Jupiter. No, this is something that's here right now that can actually be done. And it seems that the private sector is the answer to all of this, because in a lot of the cases that we see, it's public land, the private sector stepping in and actually doing something that we can see. The land is not that huge. The spaces that we're talking about in Cape Town at VW is not huge. It's not huge, but they've been able to see it and say, this is something that we can do, bring in revenue for the city, and also make it a recreational spot for the residents of this particular area. It can be done. Absolutely.
If you actually look at what other cities who have a water frontage have done with the very thing you're saying, it is fascinating to watch.
Absolutely.
Fascinating. And yet, we have those very facilities, and when it is left in the hands of our governments, whether it's the national government or whether it is the county governments, personal interests will always overshadow the larger picture of what this project could be and ought to be and how it ought to benefit the people of that particular county or country.
And people may say that, okay, so what are we really supposed to do with it? And we whet your appetite just a little bit more. Fisherman's Wharf in San Francisco, for example. This is where they fish. The wharf is right there. Fish taken, commercial fishing taken through there. But what have people done? They've established, private entities have gone and established restaurants along the wharf so that you're basically eating fresh. Fish, frying pan, plate. Right? It happens and it can be done. It is California government. The wharf belongs to the government.
What's it called again?
The Fisherman's Wharf.
How far is it from Kenya?
Well, I mean, it's an example. It's on the other end of the planet, but okay. It's on the other end of the planet, but the human beings exactly who have the same functions as we do as humans. So, of course, the brain can engage and things like this can be done. And I think it takes our creativity to another level. Or just saying that as public or as national government, we're not. And there's nothing wrong with saying we're not able to handle it. You come, let's share the revenue. Obviously, our plate is too full. We have other things that we're talking about. We have other things that we need to handle. You then, as private sector, come in, take this thing, give us a percentage of the revenue, right? And you carry on with this thing.
You know, one of the most successful ventures we have in this country, though most people don't seem to see it as a public-private partnership, is our national parks. The success of these national parks has been because of that partnership. Those hotels that are built at national parks don't own that land. It's not theirs.
No, they don't.
Okay.
It's in a rental state.
Yes, exactly. So, but look at how that particular partnership has benefited Kenyans for the longest possible time. When it comes to fighting off certain things that may not benefit the park, when it comes to ensuring that the image of that particular industry is kept well, the private sector have played a very, very important role in it.
There's the other question that will be raised, however. There are those who would argue now, when you start privatizing these public places, and now you're bringing in, profit thinking, commercial enterprises to come and manage them, that you're saying that the people of Nairobi are going to start paying for services that they shouldn't be paying. Because these are public places they should have access to these public places
Yes.
at no fee.
No,
They
but-
are already paying tax.
Right. No, but you should have access to these public places at no fee. The private sector then comes in and brings in value-added services.
Yes.
So that while you're here having not paid to get in, there are other things that you can do at the same time that, yes, you would have to pay for, but to be able to sit in the space absolutely is free.
You
but
can
there are
sit
other
for
things
free,
that you,
but if you want to paddle in that little water space,
right,
You pay
then
for
pay
that.
for it.
surely
Absolutely.
it needs to be maintained.
Right.
All right.
Yeah, yeah.
By the same token, I mean, you think
Some
of-
elements must be free.
Yes,
for
Access
sure.
to the
even
toilet,
if you look
sure,
at, say,
for
for
sure.
instance, the charges that are levied on a citizen of this country if you go to a national park, it's minimal. It makes it possible for you to actually go. That's why you find school trips always going there. If you are not a local, then they charge you a premium. I think there's nothing wrong in making people value whatever it is that they undertake or they participate in by throwing in a cost to it.
Yeah.
People tend to value what they pay for.
Very true.
That's true.
And would value it.
That's true.
And because of the value that you attach to it, then you're likely to take care of it while you're even, in the area. You're not gonna litter. It's interesting because you walk into the parks in this country, clean, very clean, because you made to pay for it. You're not gonna litter because there's a fine that's attached to it. For example, some of the cleanest places. So you can
You
imagine.
don't throw your hand outside the car window because lion.
One moment hand, next moment hand gone.
Right, so let's conclude the show for the day and for the week. Well, thank you very much for tuning in to The Situation Room every day of this week, Monday to today, Friday, 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. What are your closing remarks, the highlights or lows of the week?
Well, sure. I mean, of course, there's a lot of stuff that's going on, and the necessity to have heightened a sense of awareness of what's going on around us, and of course, look at the deeper story behind the story. Have a good weekend.
Yes, City.
Always ask the question, is this the whole story?
Is this it?
Yes.
Is this it? Is this all?
Is this all? Yes.
Well, for those who will be traveling to the BBI Marenos in Nyeri, go well. And please keep us out of it. And when you come back, let's continue having a conversation about, locusts are in this country. Let's talk about preparation on coronavirus. Let's talk about floods. Now we have the lake has burst its banks. The lake now has burst its banks. And about 100,000 people are affected
Yes.
around Lake Victoria.
Schools.
People are not going to school. But we are spending money taking people to Meru to discuss 2022. God save our country. Well, the Situation Room will be back on Monday, 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. Have a great weekend, folks.